taking control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, 'cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. Hey, it's Hump Day. We made it halfway through. We want to welcome you to tonight's show and thank you for listening in on spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, the United Public Talk Radio Network, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio as we welcome you to tonight's show, broadcasting right out of Uncle Jimbo's cabin here in the Great White North, live on this Wednesday night, early Thursday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we broadcast every night of the week. We do it because we love it, and we do it because we want to be your one-stop shop when it comes to all the weird and strange things that are going on in this universe. If you like our theme music, you could thank our resident guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. If you're on a social media junkie like I am, you can follow me on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like. Spaced Out Radio Show on Instagram. I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we'd like to say hello to everyone taking part in the chat rooms of Revolution Radio, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Force Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. If you haven't signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet, what's taking you? It's only $5 a month, and with that, your name gets entered into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While on our website, you can read our latest blogs, check out the SOR Space Wire by our news director, Eric Markham, and if you've had a weird experience and you want it investigated, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. It's right there on the website. Researcher Mike Schmidt is waiting for your information, which is 100% confidential. We want to thank our new affiliate, the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio family, and thank you for allowing Spaced Out Radio into your homes, your vehicles, or wherever you are listening. If you're one of the 160-plus countries around the world tuning in right now, thank you so much. If you're on Revolution Radio, remember, it is the largest nonprofit online radio station going today. Visit freedomslips.com and donate today. A familiar voice returns to Space Out Radio tonight, as it's been a while, but the crypto historian Rob Morphy is back, and he's brought a longer, edgier beard with him, and you know I'm a fan of a good beard. Yes, Rob is from Cryptopia US to talk more historic and lesser-known strange sightings of the weird and strange from around North America and the world. Rob is a different type of cryptid hunter. It's the history of the event that gets him and his crew going. And trust me when I say, The weirder the story, the more intrigued the team is to investigate. Sure, stories like Bigfoot and Dogman are sexy and present with them an allure of mysticism, but what really fires up Rob and his Cryptopia crew are the odd and obscure. So obscure that most people out there would say that either alcohol, drugs, or some sort of mental psychosis was in play here. From melting creatures to the frogmen of Ohio, and of course, the close encounters with aliens from above get Rob going. Rob will be with us for the first 2 hours. In hour number 3, Jim Collisnick from Vancouver Supernatural will come on in and discuss some paranormal and a haunted event we are joining up to put together up here in the sticks where I live. So if you're in British Columbia and looking for something to do this weekend, well, we have your plans already taken care of. Let's get right to it. The Crypto Historian is back finally. Thank you so much, my friend. It's good to have you back on, Mr. Morphy.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I have missed this very much. SOR Radio is a bright spot in my month, and I love being here, so thank you for having me back, Dave.
Well, you know what? You always have an open ticket, and I'm not going to get into why you've had to miss the last few months, and it's been kind of a sporadic year. But, you know, for our audience, I will say this. Rob is a very generous and giving guy when it comes to his family and friends. You know, he's been hit with a lot of health concerns surrounding him. Not him in general, but surrounding him, and Rob is the first thing to drop the ball and say, hey, Dave, I can't do it. I've got some stuff I got to take care of, and you know what? The door is always open for you, my friend. You know that. I have not changed your time. You're on the third Wednesday of every month, and we're going to continue that as long as you want to go for it, my friend.
Well, I love it, and I thank you so much, and your listeners for your patience. Is, like I say, one of the great joys of my life is digging into the dark archives of crypto history and all sorts of this wonderful things. This is a great joy for me to be able to share this knowledge, so thank you.
Rob, we have a whole plethora of new listeners coming in now as we've joined up with Revolution Radio. We've joined up with the UPRN, and our numbers are going through the roof here, which is amazing to me. And I love it, and I love seeing this grow. But there's a lot of people, Rob, now, newbies here, that got to get to know you. You know, I know you have always had a fascination with the cryptid and the strange, but maybe explain to the new audience members who are listening for the first time to you what you're all about. What got you into not just cryptids, but the historic cryptids, the strange, the obtuse?
Well, that's interesting. I think, like a lot of people, I was born in the 70s, so that instantly gives me a vintage. But when you were young in the 70s, for any of our, your listeners out there that remember this time, it was just a fascinating time to be surrounded with paranormal information and television shows and, classic semi-documentary movies that are, mostly fun and somewhat real, like Legend of Boggy Creek. So when I was a kid, I was instantly attracted to things like this. I had a mom who was very open-minded, and I was always grateful for that. So she would tell me stories about things she had seen or local legends of, like, we lived near Cuda Lake when I was young, which is one of the Finger Lakes in upstate New York, in central New York, actually. And there was, like, this crazy eel creature that was allegedly responsible for biting people and actually breaking arms. So as a kid, I was instantly seduced by the idea of a world full of mysteries and things that just hadn't quite been pinned down by science. And the more I got into it, the more research I did, spending tons of time in the library, all the things you had to do in the years pre-internet. And I amassed a huge collection of, paperbacks and just correspondence with people that were investigating. Even as a young child, I would write letters. And what I quickly discovered was that, as fascinated as I was by, traditionally beloved and well-known cryptids like Bigfoot, like Nessie, and as interesting as their backgrounds were, it was these really strange off cases like the Enfield Horror, which is like a three-legged, red-eyed, grayish hopping entity that like shredded a kid's sneakers. And I know we've talked about it before, but some of your listeners haven't had a chance to hear about that yet. And other really, really strange things that maybe were only seen once or twice, like the Dover Demon, but disappeared and sort of fall in and out. And there's not a huge repetition or thousands of case files. You can speak to very specific eyewitnesses. There's usually a handful of them. The flaps are usually much smaller, and the entities are much more difficult to explain. And I think it's because the concentration of information is so much more acute, and the fact that the flaps are so much smaller that I instantly gravitated towards these and have always kind of pursued that through AmericanMonsters.com, which I founded back in the early 2000s, up to Cryptopia US, which I'm working on now with my team. We focus on the strange ones because they're often just treated as footnotes, yet sometimes some of the most intriguing and bizarre and fascinating stories really come from these little side paths off the main thoroughfare of cryptozoology.
You have to do me a favor tonight, my friend. We have some people playing a drinking game in one of the chat rooms here. So every time we say the word plethora, they are going to take a shot. So if we can just sneak that in every now and again.
One of my favorite words.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, you go to Cryptopia.us, you will find a plethora of bizarre cryptids to satisfy your curiosity. So there's the first one for you guys.
Absolutely, and I'm fist pumping on that one. I appreciate that. That's good stuff. Now, when you come in, and I'm just letting our audience know, Rob comes in with a bunch of weird, strange creatures. So what happens here is we go through about one every 15, 20 minutes, and we're going to ask some questions on this, and Rob's going to give us a history of the sighting, what happens. Now, some of these creatures, honestly, you are going to absolutely scratch your head over. And, you're going to be able to say, what the hell is that, Rob? What are you talking about? So that's what we're doing here. And some of these names you'll laugh at the stories, and some of them you will say, oh my gosh, this is absolutely horrific. How did this even happen? What is this creature? It gets that strange and weird with Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us on with us. And like I said, Rob comes on the third Wednesday of every month to wind us up about some real weird cryptids. So let's get this thing started, Rob. Your beard ready?
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent. Now, this one is strange because, as you don't know yet, we have actually, a group of three of us up here, have started a Sasquatch group. And we've actually found a couple of prints. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's what I'm doing tomorrow. We're going back into the wilderness to see if now that the snow is starting to come into the areas here, we're going to actually go look for some prints. And my buddy Mike, who is listening right now, he actually found a track that we got to actually take turkey basters into the puddles that have been made, because all these puddles are about 12, 14 inches long, but they're filled with water, so we're not sure if they're footprints or if they are actual animal prints, shall we say. But this one, and I've seen Bigfoot, but I would not want to run into this one. What the heck is a sheep squatch?
Now, that is interesting. The sheep squatch, and I have to admit, is one that kind of fell even under my radar at first. It's starting to get a little traction now, but I was approached by a television program. Can I mention names? I don't know what the...
sure. What the hell?
Monsters and Mysteries in America approached me to do some research, maybe be a talking head, and also because I'm an illustrator as well, which is something else that, that anyone who goes to Cryptopia will know about, because a lot of the artwork on there is my own too. And of course, what am I going to draw? But I love monsters. If I love researching and writing about them, I'm certainly, going to be fascinated with drawing since I was a kid. I'm basically a 14-year-old when it comes to my imagination, and I love it. So they gave me the basic facts of this case, and I started doing some research for them and, working on my illustration, which ended up appearing in the show, and got some information. And what's fascinating about this is this. Now, obviously, the word squatch has been, ad hominem, just attached to just about any cryptozoological phenomenon. Just in the same way, anytime somebody sees a sea or lake monster, it becomes the Nessie of New York or the Nessie of wherever. So people are going to be inclined to think that this is a bipedal, two-legged, lumbering kind of creature. It's not. It's much more fascinating. It's actually a quadruped. It's a four-legged, shaggy white, horned, multiple sharp-toothed, clawed, like almost with raccoon-like hands, creature that's been seen throughout West Virginia, Southwest Virginia, that whole area that kind of conglomerates together down there, and in the mountains and the forested areas around there. So what makes this creature so fascinating, the legend of it goes back for years and years, centuries even, but is that it's got eyes set on the side of its head and horns, which would make you think probably an herbivore. This seems to be the kind of thing that a buffalo would have, or a creature that was looking for predators. But it also is said to have very sharp claws and razor-sharp teeth. So it becomes this strange offshoot, sort of like a platypus would be. You know, like if indeed this thing is real, the first thing you have to assume is if you've got a four-legged, hand-bearing, even though it walks on all four legs, horned yet sharp-toothed creature, that this might be one of those early mammalian offshoots that, you know, happened, you know, multiple thousands and millions of years ago that just never really went anywhere. And so it's interesting when people see it, they tend to smell sulfur, which is made. Some people think that there might be a paranormal element to it, but just trying to ground it in reality, it could just be an offensive body odor or a defense mechanism, kind of like what the glands of a skunk would use or other creatures. But the thing is, when people see this thing, it is large enough to be frightening, and a lot of people have claimed that when they've gotten too close, they have been terrified, as anyone would be, to see just this looming, large, crawling, toothy, white-haired monstrosity.
It's also called the wild thing, which obviously, looking at pictures of it online here, it seems like it's a really pissed off creature, Rob. It doesn't look like it would be something that is, happy to be seen.
No, and most wild animals aren't. I mean, anyone with experience in the woods, be it hunting or hiking, knows that creatures are, whether they're predators or whether they're herbivores, they're looking to avoid people. And the bigger ones that can defend themselves are looking to avoid people, like, say, a bear. But if they don't, if they're worried about their young or they feel like their territory is being impinged on, then they will react in a way that's very dangerous to human beings. And so you have to assume, just like you have to assume with all these creatures, that if you bump into this, and it's sometimes, like you say, it's called the wild thing, the white thing. I mean, there's a lot of, in the Appalachians, different names. You are going to be in trouble, probably, and the best bet would be to get out of there as quickly as you can. There's no story that I've ever come across of it climbing, but then with the hands, the way it's described, like, say, the back legs are often not seen as much, so I don't know what the actual paws look like in that, but the front paws, though they are said to crawl on them, actually are said to resemble raccoon hands. That means that if these, eyewitnesses are accurate in their description, this thing could climb, this thing could grasp, this thing can yank and tear. So I would be very, very cautious if I were in the woods of West Virginia or Southwest Virginia and I stumbled across something, or if you smell that pungent kind of animalistic odor, or even a sulfury scent, which, again, could be an extremely natural thing, and according to some is a distinctly paranormal thing, but it definitely demands the utmost of caution.
Now, when I think sulfur, there's a couple things that come to my mind. Something demonic, because that sulfur has been surrounded by demons, or
absolutely
something along the Mothman line, because apparently Mothman had that sulfuric smell as well.
There's a lot of creatures that allegedly give off a smell like that, and very many of them, like the Mothman, and I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with at least the basics of the legend, but that's another strange, large, semi-humanoid, basically a broad chest, long legs, which sometimes have crab-like claws at the bottom, and a large wingspan. This creature that isn't like any bird or bat or any other flying creature we know that was seen around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and before the tragedy at the Silver Bridge collapse. This thing has been seen and like a lot of other creatures, the scent of sulfur was said to be there before the sighting and to linger long after, which has made a lot of people think, because a lot of people think the Mothman might be more of a paranormal phenomenon than a cryptozoological phenomenon, and obviously the distinct difference there is cryptozoological is an unknown animal, and paranormal is a whole spectrum of things that could be either interdimensional, demonic, like you said. I mean, that just opens up a whole panoply of options, and it becomes a much more difficult kind of road to go down. But in terms of it being a cryptozoological creature, these might be just warning scents, a way of spraying an area, a way of keeping, other things away, kind of like the way a skunk would use it. But yes, the Mothman, sheep squatch, and many other creatures are said to have like kind of an either acrid or more distinct sulfurous smell, which anyone who's smelled it, like a smelling salt or whatever, knows it's a horrible stench and one you won't soon forget. And a lot of people assume that this is because these creatures aren't from the wilds of Virginia, like Mothman and sheep squatch, but because they're from the bowels of hell. I don't know if I personally subscribe to that, but it's something that is definitely out there in the literature and in the theories abounding about it.
Has this creature been known to attack anybody?
I don't know about outright attack. It's been known to chase people, to be sure. And it's, people that have been camping, people that have been walking in the woods have seen it and have, actually said it's plowed through the shrubs. They've run away. Some of the eyewitnesses I talked to when I was preparing my piece for that show, they talked about how scared they were, and they basically were camping behind their home in West Virginia and had to run, through the deep woods that they were in, which was adjacent to the yard, and then back into their house. But whether or not this is a predatory activity or a territorial activity is not known. And unfortunately, as would be the case in a lot of these things, if it ever caught somebody, there's a pretty excellent chance that they would not have been around to retell their tale. And it's always a danger when you run into a wild animal, especially a large one, and even more especially if it happens to be a predator. But there's no way to know for sure. Like, I don't believe, and I can't claim to have like a photographic memory of everything I've read about this thing, but I don't believe it's ever been seen eating. So we don't know for sure, but it's a good bet based on the description of the creature that it's probably an omnivore, which would just make sense. And if that's the case, then if you see this thing, I hope you have some measure of speed and a way to get out of there, because you probably don't want to let the confrontation reach its natural conclusion.
A lot of these creatures tend to be having sightings that are very, very far and few between. And for someone like me, where I try and keep a skeptical mind, is probably the same as most of our audience, and you as well, for the most part. When you have a sighting, say, once every 4, 5, 10 years, how do you make it credible that they're actually seeing what they are seeing?
That's an excellent question, and it's difficult. It's difficult. You can go through the literature, the scientific literature, and you can find out about what was known about, say, the mountain gorilla in the late 1800s, when reports of huge, hairy, man-like, and often ferocious, they totally amplified the ferocity of the mountain gorillas, which is what happens when you pass a story onto a story and it amplifies. And people completely disregarded it until, the early 20th century, when the carcass was finally brought out and it went from the realm of cryptozoology, even though that wasn't a phrase coined at that point, to the realm of straight zoology. So I would say that there are plenty of pieces of evidence in the search for animals, all of which started unknown at one point, where there are indigenous peoples that have encounters, be they from West Virginia or Central Africa or wherever they may be, and they report them, and these reports are things that have to be taken seriously, not everyone, and not certainly at just face value where you're just wide open and gullible to everything, but you have to at least look at it if you're an investigator into these things and try to be objective. So there's a lot of cases that would indicate that things are not often seen, and then once people know they're there and they become bona fide, if you will, then a lot more people go looking for them, and then they become part of the just natural fun of a territory. The other side of that coin would be those that tend to lean towards a more paranormal idea for the origins of things like sometimes Bigfoot. A lot of Native Americans obviously believe it's a spiritual animal, less a zoological one, and things like that. If it becomes if it's your idea that these things are either demonic or just from another dimension, well, then the sightings are going to be sporadic by definition. I tend, though, to, in my, as you know, because we've talked about this many times, I tend to err on the side of the scientific method. Now, it's not to say that I don't try. I mean, I'm going to digress here for a second. I feel like I am a skeptic in the classic sense, not the sense of what professional skeptics are, like Shermer and other people that are basically professional debunkers. If I do not, believe in this in my framework of reality, then I'm going to poo-poo it and use even some absurd evidence of my own to decry it. I want to look at the evidence impartially. I want to see what the people are saying, what evidence there is, like via, hair samples, footprints, photographs, video, whatever it may be, and assess it with an eye towards, looking for hoaxers and looking for misidentification, but open to the possibility that this could be real. So I tend to err on the scientific side. I want to think, for the most part, that these are genuine animals, biological, members of the fauna of whatever territory they're seen in, that just haven't been discovered yet. Because once you go into the paranormal aspect, which is not to say I don't think there's any validity there, I think people should research these things from the point of view which they feel most comfortable. But once you open that Pandora's box, basically, it just is it's going to be an onslaught of theories and potentialities that just there's no way to test. So I try to keep it kind of grounded in what we know about zoology.
Who would win in a battle between Goatman and Sheep Squatch?
All right, well, that's a good one. Goatmen, they go back to the legends of Pan and the satyrs, and they're notoriously clever. They seem to have human-like, if not superior to human-like intellect, and they use weapons, pretty agile on their hooved feet. I think I'm going to give it to the Goatman, assuming that he comes from a satyr-like, lineage, because I think he'll probably be able to outthink the brute strength of a sheep squatch and maybe take it down. If it's one-on-one and the Goatman's surprised, the sheep squatch might have an edge, but I'm leaning towards Goatman in this battle.
Oh, goodness, I don't know. Looking at this drawing of the sheep squatch, I don't know, man. I think we're in for a real cage match. Real good cage match here.
It would be a battle for the ages.
Oh, for sure. I do have to ask you, though, okay, because once again, this is another creature in that West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania triangle, and it's always a triangle for some reason. Right. What is going on where all these weird and strange sightings seem to happen, or the majority of them, in that triangular area?
Well, that's an interesting theory. I of course can't say, definitively why these things happen or why they seem to happen in a triangular pattern, though I tend to think that if we wanted to build a trapezoid around weird areas or even circles, we could probably do that. I think triangles just make it easier to kind of find a definitive center for the weirdness. But whether it's the Bridgewater Triangle or in the Bermuda Triangle, the most famous, there's always these areas in the world, and Ivan Sanderson researched these a lot, and sometimes they're on land and sometimes they're in the sea, where just strange things seem to happen more. Weird sightings of creatures and unidentified flying objects and disappearances galore happen in these areas. Why? There tends to be geographic locations wherein you are more likely to see something that will shake the foundations of what you probably, assume natural reality is, and where you are more likely to maybe never show up again. I don't know. but it is fascinating, and it definitely, me, like every other researcher out there, are definitely attracted to it. There's a certain amount of fear that comes into it when you start reading about them as a kid, but that definitely turns into intrigue and fascination, and then you find yourself doing your best. When I took my first boat out into the Bermuda Triangle, I had a little thrill of fear. I was still a teenager, but I was so excited, So when you go into these places, you just hope that you get to be one of the lucky ones that sees something fascinating, but gets to leave to tell about it. But I don't know why these places are hotbeds.
Well, give us a hypothetical answer then. Like, do you think maybe it's portals? Do you think maybe there's some sort of time warp that is happening? Maybe government experimentation? What's your gut feeling on this?
My gut feeling on this, and bearing in mind that I do want to err on the side of things that can be chronicled and put down in a logical way, is that there are more rural areas, there are more isolated areas where things like a sheep squatch, say, for example, or a Bigfoot, might be able to be hidden a little bit longer, and that just happens to fit into a pattern that someone can throw a triangle on. Now, being a little more broad-minded about it, the fact is that a lot of these things, like UFOs, are obviously not going to have some sort of attachment necessarily to a geographical location, or disappearances for that matter. So if I'm broadening it well beyond the scope of cryptozoology to just deal with all these other phenomenon, I'm going to have to think that it seems as if it's a nexus of sorts, like, say, perhaps interdimensional, perhaps we don't even have a word for what is really going on, but where things can pass back and forth, be it people away from here, be it things like have been reported throughout the world, especially in Europe, like fairy folk and weeb folk, and I've written an article or two in some Australian publications about hunting for fairies and stuff, and how that associates with cryptozoology, and you really find like these points of geographical locations where strange things really do seem to happen a lot, and where sometimes people go missing and are never seen again. And you almost have to wonder, is this an opening to another world? And maybe they haven't disappeared because they met some violent end, but maybe they disappeared and they're exploring this fascinating new reality, and who knows? I mean, I'd like to be optimistic about it, but if I'm moving out of the cryptozoological to the broader spectrum, I think it's probably because there are places that are, geographically located on Earth that have portals, for lack of a better term, openings, conduits to other realities, perhaps other dimensions, and that maybe some scientific theory or algorithm can be wrapped around it at some point, but right now it is so ethereal that it just is stuffed into the realm of mythology and mysticism.
So when you take a look at this creature like sheep squatch, do you try and maybe balance out what it may be? Because I realize the name with the word squatch in it, people will recognize it to be something along the lines of bat squatch or something, or Sasquatch or something along those lines. But for a lot of people, do we try as researchers to put all of these creatures together and say, okay, sheep squatch would fall into the Bigfoot category, Mothman would fall into maybe the Thunderbird category? Is that what you try and do?
Well, not quite that simply. I mean, yeah, you're right. I try to find what, say, physiological traits would put them into what groups. Like, are they mammals? Are they reptiles? Are they fish? Are they birds? Are they purely aquatic? Are they land-based? So yeah, I try to categorize them by the natural niche in which they would fit, be it from the environment they're in and by the physical description that people give. But I wouldn't be, say, inclined to, and I know you're just throwing things out there, like to lump a Mothman with a Thunderbird because they both happen to fly. I mean, that's way too broad. Yes, as human beings, we have an overwhelming desire to categorize things, to put them in their place. It is why we've made such advances in medicine and technology, but it's also part of the rigid bureaucracy that, stymies so much creativity. It's kind of a give and take and a love-hate thing. But even though I do, I'm going to look at a Bigfoot report, and of course you're going to think in terms of, is it a hominid? Is it a hominoid? Is it a form of great ape? Is it a proto-human? And because the descriptions, and because what it is, you know that it's not a form of terrapin. It's not like a missing turtle. It's clearly not that. So you have to do just basic due diligence with what you know of science and how to do things. But yes, I think it's important to categorize these things, but you have to be careful not to try to lump things together just because they happen to both swim, say. And that's part of the reason, as you mentioned earlier, and people will find that at Cryptopia, why I'm fascinated by these really strange things that clearly don't fit into the normal genus and phylum and just the normal definitions of zoology that we know, because those propose an extra challenge. It's like, if they're not extraterrestrial or interdimensional, these things are absolutely unclassifiable biologically, and I love that kind of stuff. But yes, I do think for the most part, when I come across a cryptozoological sighting, be it a classic one like the Jersey Devil or just one of those really out there ones that I like to come across, I do my best to find out about the fauna of the region, what it could be mistaken for, and what this could possibly represent in terms of evolution.
I want to get in a question here before we move on to our next topic. This one comes from Chris. He is saying, Rob, have you ever investigated vampires, and do you believe they're real? Because Chris actually had an experience with a shadow figure with fangs.
That's interesting. I have not spent a lot of time with vampires, mostly because these tend to be human-based phenomenon that have a very distinct supernatural sort of bias, which doesn't mean I don't say supernatural in the sense that couldn't exist in the natural world. I mean, because there's so much in the mythology that kind of ties it to theology and the paranormal, which is not necessarily my expertise. I've certainly done like the iron-tooth vampire of Gorbals and a few other unique cases I've looked into. And Chupacabra, I guess you could say in some ways, is an animal version of a vampiric creature in that it has a proboscis that sucks blood literally from its prey. But I don't really spend a lot of time focused on things like werewolves or vampires or things that tend to be human transformation, because that is a different realm from cryptozoology. It flirts with it, but I would definitely be interested to hear more about his case. And when you get into shadow people and these kind of dark entities that people feel are stalking them or cross their paths, you're dealing with a whole other realm of paranormal study, one which I cannot claim. I don't know if I claim to be an expert in anything, to be honest, but I would definitely not claim to be an expert in that. But I find it fascinating. I find it terrifying. I think we've all been in situations, whether or not we actually saw something, where we've just felt this unease and dread come over us walking, like sometimes I'm walking out to the dumpster night, taking out garbage at the end of the day, and I just get this cold kind of feeling, and you have to look over your shoulder. Sometimes that's probably just, you freaking yourself out a little, or you heard something. Sometimes I think there really could be something there that perhaps we're not privy to with the five senses that we have access to, and that is something more gut trying to protect you, like your intuition, parts of your brain that you maybe don't know about, parts of just your gut instincts that are just trying to keep you safe from predatory things that maybe we are better off not knowing much about, because we might be terrified if we did know what we shared this world with. I don't know if this answers Chris's question, and I'm sorry, Chris, if I tend to digress. I know I always do, but I find it fascinating. I would love to hear more about it, but I can't say that I know a ton about vampires.
Let's get to Joe's question. It's kind of funny. He's saying it's 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Joe, we got to define Fahrenheit and Celsius here, because I'm in Canada. 35 degrees to me is warm, very hot. So we'll go with Fahrenheit on this one. He's in California.
That's chilly.
Yeah, he's right on the California-Nevada border, right in the mountains there. He says, when the temperature drops below freezing, does Bigfoot officially become a Yeti?
Yep, he gets the traditional white coat, which of course is a myth in and of itself, and migrates over the ghostly land bridge of the Bering Strait. That's a funny question. It's a fun question. I used to think of them too in terms of, were they the same species? You know, when you're a kid, you hear Bigfoot, you hear Yeti, Yowie, you know, you can go out in Honey Island Swamp Monster, Skunk Apes. They all seem to be related, as I've researched so many different ones throughout the world of different sizes, of different temperaments, of different physiological makeups. The Yeti is still one of the most fascinating, and in my opinion, one of the top 5 most likely to actually be discovered to be an unknown animal of all the famous ones out there. But yeah, no, obviously, you know, for any children that might be listening, that is not how it works. But yes, I think they're both fascinating creatures, and there are times, you know, I live in upstate New York, and I would really love a Yeti-like coat because the beard can only cover so much, and it gets pretty darn chilly.
I know the feeling, man. I had our first snowfall yesterday. It was cold, man. Freezing cold. Today I woke up and it was 5 below zero.
Oh.
And this is just the start. This is the brutal part about it. It's just the start. But either way, I have no sympathy for somebody saying 35 degrees is cold. I'm in freezing temperatures here. Anyways, let's move on.
In Fahrenheit, it's pretty chilly.
Exactly. I hear you. It's only about 1 degree Celsius, so yeah, it is getting pretty cold. Joe, put your Uggs on. Your feet will get warm. Anyways, one more question before we move on to the next creature. This one comes from Sabretooth. What are your opinions or thoughts on oceanic cryptids like Kraken and Megalodon?
Well, the thing that Megalodon has going for it is the fact that it's real. It's in the fossil record. It existed. There's no one that can doubt that it was a genuine predator. That, you know, and a Megalodon is a massive great white shark, if any of your listeners don't happen to know. And they were the ultimate predator of their epoch, long thought to be extinct. I think that there's a chance. I mean, if there's going to be a chance for anything, especially a large predator like the Kraken, which is often kind of associated with giant squid, of course, and sometimes associated with other things, too, that just happen to have tentacles. The ocean is going to be where you're going to find it. The ocean is full of mysteries. I mean, it's probably one of the most oft-quoted things ever said in the field of cryptozoology, but I'll say it again. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the ocean that occupies, you know, some 70+% of our Earth. And it's not even just the surface where we live, like on the land, it's the depths of it too. So the sheer amount of real estate that ocean creatures have is it's calculable, but it seems incalculable because it's so epically large, and it's so unfathomable. Literally, it's in complete darkness, and we've only managed to explore a very small part of it, and probably some of the few people that might run into some strange things. These would be the crews of nuclear-powered subs that can stay submerged for prolonged periods. These people aren't going to be making cryptozoological reports just by the nature of what they're doing. So I think we have a lot of surprises, and some of them probably very, very large, that the better our technology gets, that we will find in the deepest of oceans. And I'm very excited about that. The technology will improve. Human submersibles, rovers, drones, aquatic drones. These things are going to end up, I mean, they've already discovered, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of creatures just by seeing them with cameras on the ocean floor, on rovers and things like that submersibles that go down there. Eventually, when we get more coverage and have more scientific institutions doing this, I think we're going to start finding some very large things. I think there's a very legitimate case to be made for many different varieties of sea serpents that, like, Bernard Hoovelmans and a lot of other people have chronicled over the years. And I think we're going to have some really stunning revelations. And I don't think we look to the ocean enough. Obviously, we have a lot of marine biologists and other, you know, experts that are fascinated by the ocean, but they're usually covering whatever creature they know exists and studying that, and that's their expertise, and that's all good and well. But I think that there's going to be a real explosion, and maybe in the next 15, 20 years, of discoveries being made just through the improvements of recording technology and submersible technology. So I think that there's very likely legitimate, maybe not the megalodon, maybe, but certainly the Kraken. I think we're going to find that the oceans are full of large, monstrous by definition creatures.
I still think megalodon is around, and a few years ago in Australia, there was a great white shark caught in one of the nets that protects the beaches. And this shark had one bite out of it that almost wrapped right around that 16-foot shark. And we have a few Australian listeners now. You can confirm that with me. And for a shark to do that, it had to be in the 30 to 40 feet range. Like, that's a big bastard in the ocean, man. And then it goes back to that famous picture of the German U-boat with what they said was a megalodon, where you saw the fin and then you saw the tail, and they measured it comparatively to the German U-boat and said that was at least 60 to 70 feet long as well. I still think this one's going, man. There may not be a lot of them, but as you said, we've only really looked at 10, maybe 15% of the ocean. That's a lot of water to be covering, and it could be hiding anywhere.
Absolutely. I think the oceans are full of mysteries, and giant sharks are probably just one of them.
Well, that's the reason why old Davy doesn't go near the water, because you just never know.
I've often been asked when I signed a contract years ago with an unnamed network to do a monster show that got put in turnaround, as these things so often do. One of my stipulations was I will not be swimming in Loch Ness. I know that the cases of the creature attacking people are very few and far between, and yet that is a childhood nightmare, and I didn't want to be the one exception to the rule. So I agree. Unless it's heavily chlorinated and absolutely clear, there is a very good chance I won't be swimming in it.
Well, I saw that crocodile in Africa go right into the swimming pool and start attacking people. There was a hotel video on that. I'm not doing that either, especially in foreign countries. That's for sure.
Safety first.
Exactly. I'm a meal, Rob. I'm a meal.
We all are. That's the pity of the human race.
I agree. Now, let's move on. We got about 10 minutes before we got to go to break here. This one may carry us over. The devil monkey. Now, I'm a firm believer that there are not supposed to be monkeys living on North American soil, but the devil monkey has had quite a few sightings.
Yeah, absolutely. What makes these things interesting, and, of course, there's a whole series of NAPEs, as they call them, which is North American ape, when they're not supposed to be here, as you just said. I mean, we're not supposed to have Bigfoot. We're not supposed to have orangutans, chimps, anything like that. What these things are much more like baboon-type creatures. They tend to have a furry mane, sharp teeth. They're about 3 to 4 feet tall. The earliest sighting that was reported, and there's been some sketchier ones, but the one that we can confirm is from 1934. And what these things are known for, they're often seen in the Midwest, bounding and hopping, kind of like a kangaroo. In fact, a lot of people think they're seeing a kangaroo at first that might have gotten out from a zoo or a private collection. Are these strange, and this is what their most notable characteristic is they're hyper-aggressive. Yes, they can jump nearly 20 feet, according to some eyewitnesses, and they are known to attack people in cars. There was a pair of nurses that apparently were attacked by a devil monkey, and it tried to smash through the glass. They're seen in Florida in skunk ape territory, and I think some skunk ape sightings are probably technically devil monkey sightings, and that's why they call them devil monkeys, as I'm sure your audience has already surmised, because they have just a devilish temper. They are violent, they are aggressive, they are evidently territorial, very possibly carnivorous, and when people run into them, it's scary. I think one of the most exciting things, and there's lots of local legends, but it was the DeRitter roadkill, which kind of blew up on the internet in 1996, and we have an article on that on Cryptopia US. And what's interesting is that there is a series of photographs of what I think may very well have been a devil monkey on a Louisiana roadside, and it looks kind of like a strange combination of a baboon and a Pomeranian, sort of. It's puffy, it's hairy, it's got long digits, a snout that's very baboon-like, and I'm very sad that this was only, I mean, I'm glad somebody took a series of photos of it because it leaves us with an intriguing mystery, but I'm sad that the samples weren't taken because it would be really nice to know definitively if this creature that was apparently hit by a truck or something on Highway 12 in Louisiana was an actual devil monkey. But people that see these things are very afraid. They're often attacked, sometimes have scratches and other marks. Unfortunately, in the days before DNA, these reports came out, a lot of them, so they weren't necessarily swabbed and tested. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating and it's frightening, and it's one of those things, if you see them, and we've gotten some reports into Cryptopia because we take reports, and that's another thing I want your listeners to know is that we accept reports from anybody that sees something, and we do our best to follow up, look at whatever you have to say or any evidence. And lately we've been getting a plethora of it, and a lot of them are SOR listeners. So thank you for that. But the thing is that if you see these things, and I just warned somebody very recently about this, keep your kids inside and try to be safe because these things are dangerous and aggressive, and I wouldn't want to see anyone get hurt.
Once again, we're in that trifecta of Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio, the Midwest, a lot of them are in Illinois. There's something about the Ohio, especially the Ohio River Valley, this network of rivers. I mean, we've talked about the frogmen and the green-clawed beast and all sorts of other things that have been seen, the octoman. Crazy things live in the water and on the land in those areas, and it's very frightening. It's interesting, and I don't know why that region seems to be so dense with cryptozoological and other paranormal events. But it's fascinating.
You mentioned that this creature has been known to be aggressive. Have we had people attacked?
Absolutely. Like I say, there was a pair of nurses that claimed to have been attacked. Let me see here. I've got plenty of cases, and of course I don't have them directly from memory. But there's something called the Belt Road Booger, which was a bipedal monkey-like creature from Georgia. There's a lot of stories, but I'm trying to find the one specific one. Like I say, they often get confused with kangaroo reports, which is an alien animal. And I don't mean alien in terms of extraterrestrial, but like an animal that obviously should not be found in North America at all. I'm going to have to tell your listeners that you can find that article on Cryptopia, but there's definitely a pair of nurses, and I think it was in Chicago, that were attacked. And other people have claimed to have been attacked or have been stalked, like they felt like it was kind of moving around them in kind of a circle that felt like they were prey, actually, and they had to get out of there. So I would say it's your best bet if you think you see one of these to stay in the car, to film it from a safe distance, but by all means, seeing as everyone pretty much in the world has a small camera on them, film as much as you can from as safe a vantage point as you can possibly maintain.
Are the sightings rare of this creature? Like, are they by the roadsides, or is it maybe hunters or hikers that are going into the woods being chased by this creature? What's going on? What's the scenario?
Not always. That's kind of unique. I mean, you don't get people at the 7-Eleven talking about a Bigfoot walking by usually, or a Jersey Devil swooping down. But with devil monkeys, they've been seen near cities like Chicago. They've been seen by people that are just getting out of work and walking, to their car in the parking lot. In Florida, which is obviously kind of cross-pollinates with skunk apes, which are also supposed to be much smaller than your typical Bigfoot and at times display much more aggression. The southeastern type of Bigfoot, be it the Honey Island Swamp Monster, swamp or skunk ape or things like that, definitely tend to be much more aggressive than their Pacific Northwest cousins. And some of them might be, wild apes, that have escaped into like the Everglades, and some of them might be just an unknown species. But it's very difficult sometimes. Like whenever a sighting comes from a certain area, like say Florida, people instantly label it, like I said earlier, like they do with every lake monster being called a Nessie. They instantly label it a skunk ape. Sometimes it fits the classic pattern of the smelly, bipedal, hairy like the Mayaka skunk ape photos, really distinctly skunk apey, but other times they seem to be describing devil monkeys, and they just get the name of skunk ape just because of the region they're found in. So that's where you have to kind of dig a little deeper. But to answer your question again, it's not just, yes, in rural areas people see it, but like I'm talking to a woman now who has a patch of land, and I will say it's in a rural area of New York State, and she's seen things like this on her property, and it's not densely wooded necessarily. There's some patches of forest near her home, but she sees them in the fields. So, and that's something I'm definitely going to look further into and do whatever I can to, pursue this and get at least photographic evidence. So it's not as reclusive, I think, as a typical Bigfoot.
We only have less than 2 minutes left before we got to go to break here, Rob, but I'm curious, is this animal nocturnal? Is it seen more in warmer temperatures rather than cooler temperatures? Where are people seeing it and when?
Predominantly in the Midwest, lots of Ohio, some Illinois, some in Florida. It seems to be pretty well spaced out from warmer climes to places that get pretty chilly, which might indicate migration. But what kind of puts a kibosh on that a little bit is that if there were any sizable group of these things moving from state to state, then they'd probably be seen a lot more often. So they're definitely in the Midwest, and they don't seem to have a particular preference for climate. I assume they're nocturnal. Most of the sightings that I have read happen at night, though the most recent one I was just talking about earlier, they were daytime sightings. But it would make sense to me. Now, this is me putting my own 2 cents in here and not basing it on physical evidence so much, but I would assume that these would be the kind of predators that would have more advantages to work at night. So I assume they're probably nocturnal.
Wonderful. We only got a few seconds left here before we go to break here with Rob Morphy, our resident crypto historian. He's only going to be with us for 1 more hour tonight before he has to cut loose to go take care of his family, but he'll be back next month on the 21st for a full 3-hour show. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. We'll be right back.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries, so tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Morphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. from Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird? Right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness. You can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight, hour number 2 underway. Thank you so much for your tuning in on the United Public Talk Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 160 countries around the world. Thank you for allowing us to be your daytime, nighttime entertainment of the weird and strange. If you're a listener on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Yeah, Bill, you did it to me again. Hesperornithes. I think that's it. Bill tries to screw me up with the password every night. I think he may have got me on this one, but that's okay. That is your SOR Space Travelers Club for tonight. Use the password wisely. Tomorrow night on the show, we'll be talking ET and UFO disclosure. Movie director Ruben Langdon will join us. It's going to be a great show indeed. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. It equates to about $5 a month. We got a lot of swag to give away if you're a member in our exclusive club. Read up on the SOR Spacewire, my latest blog, fill out a Sightlines report, and so much more. We're going to bring more entertainment to you at spaceoutradio.com very, very soon. Tonight we have 1 hour left with our resident crypto historian, Robert Morphy from Cryptopia US. Hour number 3, we're going to be talking paranormal with Jim Kolesnik from Vancouver Supernatural. Rob, welcome back.
Thank you.
So, here we are. You like to get into the field a little bit and do some investigating. You were out on an investigation, and I'm not going to tease the story much more than that. I'll let you, the expert, break it down. But you came across something interesting.
It was pretty interesting. We recorded me and Mark Storrs, the co-founder of Cryptopia and American Monsters with me back in the day. We've been working together on this. Anyone who's ever followed the sites, they know that, I write the articles and draw the pictures, and he's the one that's always maintained some, great websites and designed some beautiful things. And, we're both fascinated. So whenever we can go in the field, he's a dad now. He was still literally living in mom's basement when we first met, and we were kids putting together a website basically back in the day. And now, we're adult men with, I have a modicum of responsibility. This guy, he's got children, but we get out in the field whenever we can. So long story short is there's a pretty close by place called Maze Point. It's these mud locks which are adjacent to Cuga Lake, which I actually mentioned earlier. It's where I used to go fishing a lot as a kid, so I have got kind of an attachment to the place, and we just thought, let's go and talk to some folks. We interviewed people some years ago for an article, and you can find the article. It's called The Maze Point Mystery Fish on Cryptopia.us. And what's interesting is that fishermen there, especially night fishermen, describe seeing a coelacanth-like creature. Now, I know a lot of people are instantly going to assume sturgeon, which makes sense. They're armor-plated, they're an ancient form of fish, and they're definitely found, though not in a great abundance, but in lakes in this area. But we really went out of our way to find these eyewitnesses and track them down to their homes, and some of them had seen this thing decades ago, or at least one of its ancestors, and others more recently, and it was described as this armor-plated fish that did not have the scaly back or even the length necessarily of a sturgeon, but had a rounded tail that was very thick and muscular, and it used it to beat on the dams of the mudlock, which is where they allow boats to pass through in between these larger bodies of water. And what the most interesting is that there was these figures carved in the tail that looked kind of like runes. Now that was the description of one person, and obviously they knew the symbolic alphabet to a degree. Now, I don't think it was obviously runes, but the fact that they had these markings makes it unlike any other fish I've ever heard of. So I'm kind of leading your listeners astray a little bit. We're here interviewing people and trying to get some video footage, and we do a podcast for Cryptopia as well. So we're going to put together a podcast and talk to the folks that run the store there and hear about it. What we got was not what we expected. What we got was a man who took us to see his brother who lived nearby. There's like a campground sort of trailer park, and it's fairly removed. It's near the Montezuma Wildlife Refuge, which is some acres of land set aside, and it's very swampy and mosquito-ridden, especially in the summer months. And his brother told us that he was with his daughters by a campfire, and we got to speak to all three of them. When what they showed me how high this thing was treed, but a hairy, ape-like sulfur stench. Needless to say, I mean, it's such a common thing. Beast kind of came out and approached their fire. They saw a face that looked somewhat ape-like, somewhat human-like. It had dark patches of fur. When they pointed up to the section of the tree, and I had all three of them do it separate of each other so we could get a pretty good estimate, it was within 8'1" and 8'3" when we measured it out. It was standing behind this lumber stack, so they couldn't see the body from, the navel down, and not that they could see a navel, but mid-torso down. But we actually had a chance to really talk with these people pretty in depth, and we're going to go back for follow-up and actually get into the field a little bit, which, as you know, I am a crypto historian. I collect the stories. I do what I can to talk to eyewitnesses, to chronicle new sightings, and to, kind of wade through the morass of old sightings and put them down, for future generations of investigators. I don't get to go out in the field nearly as much as I would like, and so when I do, and I stumble across something like this, especially something that's basically in my own backyard, it's very exciting. So this is probably one of the cooler things that I've stumbled across personally in a long time. So we're going to be breaking the story with an article and a brief podcast, and I'd love to talk to you more about it when we actually get all the evidence together and maybe introduce your listeners to it too in the coming months when we get together again. But I'm very, very excited about this. It is not an area where I'm from. Obviously, Bigfoot's been seen in nearly all 50 states. In the Pacific Northwest and the Southeast are the most dense pockets. The Atlantic Northeast is not redolent of Bigfoot, but there have been sightings. There's been some near Ithaca and the falls down there, but these are very sporadic. So something that happened this recently, and I didn't mention this earlier, but the sighting occurred in late August of 2016, means that, that there is a chance of finding perhaps some evidence, and maybe even, have a sighting, touch wood and fingers crossed. But we're going to go back out in the field and spend some time there, and it's very exciting. This is the kind of part of the adventure that I don't get to partake in nearly as often as I would like to, and that, pumps the adrenaline and gets the heart going. And so I'm very, very happy about this, and I can't wait to share with you and your listeners what we find out and where this adventure goes. It's still, ongoing right now.
I'm going out tomorrow, buddy. I'm going out tomorrow. 15 minutes from home, literally.
I can't wait to hear about that.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully we'll be able to confirm that those are footprints and not just puddles. But I'm looking forward to it. There's something about getting out in the bush and looking for these creatures that is just absolutely fantastic. Never mind just the fresh air.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, yes, I love the stories. I love the history of it. I am a writer. That is what I do. And I used to be a reporter, and I used to do all sorts of things, screenwrite, and I love that part of it. I really do love digging into the piles of evidence and getting all sorts of different eyewitness reports and everything, and trying to find some sort of method in the madness and trace it through and write the most cohesive article I can. But as much as I love that, nothing compares. Just the crunch of brush and just knowing that you are in the thick of it. And I've had a chance to do some work, as we've talked before, in South Africa and in a few other places, and that is just the most exciting. When you get to be in the field, it doesn't happen as much as I would like it to, and I do love the chronicling part, but this is definitely one of the great joys in life. So I wish you the best of luck on your expedition.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, I don't know whether I should start and ask Michael's question, but we're going to get into it because, what the hell? Everybody bugs me, Rob. You know how much I hate garden gnomes. But Michael is asking, Rob, have you heard about the gnome-like creatures in California that have been spotted?
Yeah, they seem to be pretty nefarious, actually. I'm going to have to defer like I did with Christopher's question earlier and say I am no expert on gnomes. I have written about the wee folk, as they call it, and I definitely think there is something there in the consistencies of stories that people have with encountering small humanoid creatures, sometimes that steal babies, sometimes where they have time slips that are very much like what are reported in alien abduction scenarios. I think there's a real phenomenon here, and I think there's something to it. I think that it definitely bears further research, and we've done Mark and I and our buddy Chris Carnicelli, who's also part of the team when we go out in the field, we've gone to places where there's alleged vortexes and different humanoid species that aren't necessarily coexisting on the same level of reality are allowed to meet in these places. Unfortunately, I've never had an experience one-on-one, but I've talked to people that claim to have. But back to gnomes, these creatures, the ones especially reported in Southern California, are pretty evil. I mean, they torment people. They live in rural areas, as I recall, and again, I can't claim to be an expert, I know there's one house in particular that they seem to have tormented almost all the residents of, and it's near a body of water, and some people say these might trace back to Native American legends of things like puckwudgies and things like that are just small, humanoid, and kind of, they go from mischievous to being outright malicious sometimes. But these things look exactly like garden gnomes, the red hat, the long beard, the short stature, and apparently just have a real evil intent. Now, what I would think about these things is that it's probably less likely that they are gnomes, though I guess it's possible. I don't know how much of a tradition California has of gnomes, but it might be like what a lot of people consider, especially the Native Americans I've spoke to and other, Aboriginal folks, where there's trickster spirits, things that kind of assume other forms and sort of play with things that you're naturally afraid of, and that might intrigue you to kind of attract you, but then, they terrify you. So there might be something really unique and paranormal going on with these California gnomes and other little folk sightings that are seen, and a lot of times these don't end super well for people. I mean, I'm not saying it usually ends in mass carnage, but these people end up pretty terrified and traumatized a lot of times.
Well, I can tell you this, just thinking about it is traumatizing me. Not gonna lie, don't like them. They scare the bejesus out of me, my friend. Scare the bejesus out of me. Yeah. And you know what? James Gilliland from the ECETI Ranch, he says he has gnomes all over his property. All over. And that's in Washington State.
Huh.
And they live down by the river, and they have their little caves and everything, and they're pretty good with him, and because James is quite a spiritual dude. So that's someone you might want to, if you ever head West Coast, get in touch with.
Absolutely, and I'd be interested to know, how it is, that he gets along so well. And again, you mentioned a river. They definitely tend to be seen near bodies of moving water. What the attraction is or association, I mean, if it's on a simple biological, we all need fresh water to survive, that's one thing, but if it's creatures like this, I'm always fascinated by their tacit connection to moving water.
For sure indeed. Let's move on here. Shar has a question. She is asking, have you ever noticed any scientific labs that could be creating these creatures?
There's always been legends of that. I mean, in the earliest days of the Chupacabra reporting, the assumption was almost universal in Puerto Rico that these were escapees from a United States military research facility that was located on the island. They didn't assume these things were extraterrestrial or natural. They assumed they were created. I have spoken to people, and again, these are things I can't get into too much detail on, and I know it sounds cryptic and, like Watergate Deep Throat, but it's just, when you give your word, you give your word. But that there are ships, research vessels in the oceans of the world, maintained by crews that are both financed by private corporations and, of course, the governments of the world that can afford it. And they are doing some pretty fascinating and frankly terrifying experiments with genetics, some of which are on a microbial level, which of course we all know and fear, and some of which are on with higher life forms. And I've gotten confirmation from this from a couple of sources over the years of researching it. So I think that there's a chance, especially on these floating, basically lawless labs that have no responsibility to any of the conventions, any of the treaties, any of the laws of nations, because they are in international waters. There's some crazy things from what I've heard, some kind of sci-fi stuff like hybrid animals and all sorts of things that they're basically looking to weaponize, a lot of them. So yeah, I definitely, in answer to your question, I definitely have heard of things like this, and its implications are terrifying. I mean, the smarter we get, the more advances we can make in curing diseases and bettering all our lives. But as we all know, there's a dark side to that coin that just needs to be flipped, and it can easily be militarized, and things can go awry. So it's all the scarier by virtue of the fact that we know almost nothing about it. It might be our tax dollars, but it's not, something that they have to report back to us because of the virtue of black budgets.
And yet I read the chat rooms and everything is gnomes now, Rob. Gnomes, they're throwing photos up. You know, they know I hate those things, man. They just know. The torture is strong with these listeners in the chat rooms, I can tell you that. Let's move on to another topic here. The Murfreesboro Mud Monster. I need to know about this.
This is a great one. This is one of the ones that got me when I was a kid. Like I say, you know, I saw the legend of Boggy Creek when I was young, and I was terrified, and I took it all to be gospel truth, and it is loosely based on the reality. But this happened in the summer of 1973 in Murfreesboro, Illinois. And the first encounter happened in the late June, I think June 25th of 73, and a young couple who were not supposed to be together, named Randy Needham and Judy Johnson, were basically parking, as teenagers are wont to do, at this boat launch by the Big Muddy River. And now her father had forbade her to be with him, and, you know, forbidden fruit, Romeo and Juliet, they decided that they were going to go there anyway. What they heard, and this was the first encounter that ended up lasting an entire summer in which a whole town became invested in the search for this monster, was what they described as an eagle shrieking into a microphone, which is terrifying when you think about that, especially if you're parked alone in the dark by a kind of isolated river. What they saw was basically a white, but unlike sheep squatch, it wasn't a quadruped. It was a bipedal, shaggy, filthy. It was coated in mud, but they could tell that the fur was actually like a dingy gray or white, Bigfoot-like creature, but they couldn't really see its face. Its hair was kind of hanging down all over it. It shrieked at them. They were so terrified that even though they were forbidden to be together, they went immediately and reported to the police, and this kicked off just one of the most fascinating multiple encounters. The police officers went back later. They were investigating the scene. They found what looked like tracks, huge swaths of brush that had been beaten down. They heard another scream, smelled, again, that seems like sulfur is going to be a theme tonight, but they smelled that scent, which again could be just a pungent wild odor, or it could mean something else. One of the police officers got so scared he actually dropped his revolver and had to go back and get it at a later date, but in the light of day, because he was so scared. And they described what was an unknown creature that basically was an oversized gorilla, about 8 feet tall, matted, mud-streaked, with white hair, the same basic thing. And throughout the rest of that summer, a kid in his backyard was playing. He looked up, and looming over the fence, this thing again. It went on and on and on. So for an entire summer in Illinois, in this like little backwater town, multiple sightings of this huge, terrifying creature. People created posses. The tourists flocked to the town. The press was all over the place. I mean, it's the kind of thing that I would have given my left arm to been a part of as a kid. I would have been too young in 73, but I mean, just experience something like that when you're young. And so when I was young and I came across these articles later and reports of them in a few books, I instantly became fascinated, because this is one of those phenomenal community-changing events. And it's a fairly brief thing. It's only a couple months that this flap went on, but scads of people saw it, including law enforcement officers, and it became really one of the great legends in cryptozoology.
So, with the fear this creature was putting through people at that time, were the police, as you mentioned, on a monster hunt looking for this thing, or was it they were just following the reports?
Oh no, absolutely. They got invested in this too. They got dogs, and some of them, when they were, going towards, I think there's a specific event where they tracked what was supposed to be this creature. They went to a place where the creature had been seen. They let the tracking dogs sniff the area to get the scent of whatever this thing was, and it still had that kind of lingering sulfury scent. They pursued it to an empty barn on the property of somebody named Buller, I think, and asked the dogs, these like seasoned, police tracking hounds, got to the door. They suddenly began wincing and trembling and yelping with fear, as if they knew whatever was in there was something they did not want to find, even though they had just relentlessly tracked killers and criminals for, years and years. And this was one thing they came across that they could not deal with. And by the time the police were able to surround it, they weren't able to find anything in there. It had opened up. The people that had the dogs did not go in until the police arrived. But this is just another one of those great stories where, what can scare dogs? Like a carnival was nearby, parked by the river, just setting up to do their thing, a traveling carnival. And apparently the horses went berserk. And some of the people working at this traveling carnival that didn't even know the hubbub of what was going on claimed they saw an 8-foot, 400-pound creature that had hair hanging over its face, which is a little bit like Missouri's Momo, which is a whole other cryptid that we'll probably discuss at some point. But yes, this whole town became obsessed, and the police were definitely organized and out in force for two reasons. One, they believed the people. These were their constituents. They understood that they were seeing something that was terrifying them. Whether or not they chose to believe that it was a cryptozoological phenomenon or an escapee from a zoo, they knew that these people were scared and that they were honestly reporting what they saw, so they had to deal with it. But also because of the panic running through their community, they absolutely had to deal with this head on.
And once again, was this in a rural type area? Was it somewhere where, people would have infrequent sightings, or was it in a forest where people were hiking, maybe having these intrepid encounters?
It was a relatively rural area. It was not like a hyper-industrialized or urban region, but it wasn't in a densely forested, area like the Hoh rainforest in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. It was fairly rural, but still, but what is mostly seen, and this is why a lot of people think it might have been a migratory thing, especially because it was only around mostly for that summer, is that it was seen by the river. The carnival was parked by a river. The kids that initially saw it, the teenagers, they were by the river. When the police came later that night, it was by the river. So they seemed to be traveling the river, probably using it as a food source, a water source. It's muddy probably because it was on the muddy banks of the, river. So I think that this thing was basically just traveling, and it happened to find a nice patch where, besides running into a lot of people, and it certainly left once the posse started coming out in force, it probably had a pretty good amount of fish for it to, get nourishment from, and other of its needs were covered.
It's amazing, and I realize life is such a staple when it comes to water, or water is such a staple when it comes to life, that how many of these sightings always take notice by a stream or a lake or a pond or some sort of marsh? It's always right around there, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the fact is, like you just stated, and like I stated earlier, obviously water is the base requirement for any living creature, so that makes sense on that level, but there also seems to be something more. If you get into gnome things, if you get into a lot of other strange phenomena that, seem to be more paranormal, they seem to just need water or have some sort of real connection to, especially flowing water. It's not usually a stagnant pond somewhere. It's flowing water seems to, it will attract animals that are an actual biological part of the region's fauna. It will also attract, it seems, paranormal entities. But it's bizarre, and it's interesting. But if things are going to migrate, you stick by water. That just makes sense.
Let's move on to the next one here, as we have 3 more to fit into the next 30 minutes. The Beast of Brass Knocker Hill.
Now that's a great one. That's another one of those strange ones that just doesn't really fit into any classic category. What I love about this, and this one comes from England. Let me get this thing up here. Is that it's a combination? It's a mammalian creature, but it's a combination of bear and it seems like a monkey type thing, which I find fascinating because obviously nothing like this really exists. It's about 4 feet long. It's said to be bear-like. Obviously, that should not exist in England. It's it doesn't have a bear population. It's said to have huge teeth and white rings around its eyes, which kind of makes it, I guess, a reverse panda. But the thing is, it's not just a bear with the white eyes around it. It's actually got simian-like features. It was first seen in July of 1979 by Ron and Betty Harper. At first, they discovered that the bark had been ripped off their old oak tree by an animal with teeth much, much larger by evidence of the scratches than the squirrels that were usually found in the area. By August, they noticed that tons of trees had been stripped down. So let me move on here. So here's where it became an eyewitness thing. In September of 79, the West Holland newspaper published a story about this beast, which translates as "Beast of Bath destroys the British woods." And finally, when they finally found the eyewitnesses, and I think most of them wanted to remain anonymous, they described a creature that was a combination of basically a baboon and a bear, slightly pointed ears, a muzzle that looked kind of more of a simian than a bear, sharp teeth like a bear or a baboon would have, and these very distinct white circles around their eyes. It's strange for a lot of reasons. One, these things shouldn't exist, period. There's nothing in the fossil record that would indicate a creature like this, but also because it's England. So it's rare enough when they see, say, a large black puma or any of the other anomalous animals that they sometimes see in England that aren't supposed to be there. But when you see a creature that shouldn't exist at all, then people start getting very concerned. Unfortunately, it was a very brief flap, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating because it is so unique and so rare, and that it left evidence in terms of bite marks on trees, and then eyewitnesses that came forward. So it's really kind of a strange small case, but that's kind of the thing I love about it, is that it's so unique.
I'm really surprised that they have bears over there, or anything with bears. I mean, in my area, we have a plethora of bears hanging around, and the grizzly bears are starting to move in again after a 30-year hiatus, which is never very much fun, but hopefully they're off to hibernation land now. So to hear that there is
Just for the record, Dave, bears are extinct in England. Bears don't exist in England except in zoos. Mm-hmm. And obviously there are no primates in England. So that's part of what makes it so fascinating. It's not like it could be maybe a deformed bear that just seems to have simian characteristics and a unique white pattern around its eyes. And it's not even like it's a really scruffy ape because it looked too much like a bear. It's that it doesn't look like either one of them, and even if it was a deformed bear, like I said, there are no bears in England now. Mm-hmm. So that just makes the mystery all the greater.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what confuses me about this, is that, the only bears that are spotted over there would be in zoos. And they're probably brought over from either Asia or other parts of Europe, maybe even North America. So for this creature to be meandering around the forest and literally combined with something else, that is one hell of a breeding issue there, my friend. One hell of a breeding issue.
Well, that's where you have to start. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of good reasons for people to be skeptical when they encounter things like this. It's England, and so if something this large had evolved there, we would probably know about it. But putting that all aside, just looking at the eyewitness accounts and the reports at face value, you have to start thinking to yourself, at what point did evolution allow for something like this to exist? Did it at any point? Is there anything in the fossil record that indicates any kind of creature that ever was even remotely like this? And if so, is there a chance they could have existed in some pocket? This is where, the woods meet the road as it is, the road being straight academia where you classify things and things are zoological, and the forest in this case being just the realm of the unknown. It's very hard to imagine that this could be a real cryptozoological event in the sense that there's a population of monkey-like bears with white rings around their eyes stripping trees in rural England. That just it doesn't seem possible. It's just too small. So then, if this is true, what is it? Where is it from? And what kind of phenomenon does it represent?
Could it be anything else that is natural to that area that would be stripping the trees?
Certainly. I mean, squirrels will do it. Badgers will do it. Other things like that. Yes, it's definitely possible that that this is something that was misinterpreted by the locals. Like I say, it was an anonymous guy that actually put a face to this creature as he was driving through Moncton Combe. And I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. But he's the one that said it was a bear-like creature, about 4 feet in length, with 2 striking circular white rings around its eyes, and also described it with the monkey-like face and the bear-like body and teeth. So that becomes a little, that's where you have to question a little bit, because it's an anonymous report, but then you also have to remember there's a lot of grief that comes with making a report of an anomalous animal or a UFO or anything paranormal. And so even though you have to take it with a grain of salt when the report comes from an anonymous source, you also have to realize that a lot of people making honest reports have very good reason for not wanting to give their name. But there is I'm sorry, I know I digress a lot. There is nothing natural that can account for what he described, but there are creatures, though they don't have teeth nearly as large as the ones that apparently were chewing these trees up. And at this point, you just have to take that eyewitness for their word that they know what squirrel mark looks like. So there's nothing in England, there should be nothing in England, I should say, that could do this.
Has it only been the one report, or is this something, once again, where every few years there seems to be something cropping up?
Now, a very brief window. That, again, that opens up the possibility. You, of course, have to entertain the notion of hoax. You have to entertain the notion of misidentification. But, again, if you're going to look at it objectively at first before you can weed it out, if there is a possibility it's real, why was it so brief, and what does that mean?
Always intriguing. So what do you think it is?
That's difficult, because if it was just a bear that shouldn't have been there or a baboon that shouldn't have been there, then I would think it was an escapee from a rock star's private collection, or possibly some sort of traveling circus or something, because it's basically unlike anything that should exist on Earth. Yeah. That's where I have to start looking at other places that are not traditionally scientific and traditionally zoological, and start thinking, what else could this possibly be? It's so rare. It's such a brief flap, and it's such an isolated geographic location, an island, literally. So you have to start looking into stranger possibilities when it comes to what this creature could be.
That one would put every hair on my body up. I can honestly say that. Half baboon, half bear. I know how bears are sometimes, and they could be aggressive. That would just scare.
As can baboons. I mean, primates are no joke either. I mean, literally, they will rip your face off on occasion. So you're right. A combination of the intellect and the aggression of both those creatures would be terrifying. And this is one of the ones I got to draw a picture of, because, again, once you read reports like that, the artist in me is this is what gets excited to try to do. And this is something I do when I'm talking to eyewitnesses too, almost like police sketches. Whether I'm reading reports that are decades old or whether I'm talking to an eyewitness in person, what I like to do is doodle while I'm recording the conversation, so that I can try to get an impression of what they saw if, we weren't lucky enough to have a witness that happened to have a camera with them. And so this is one of those ones I kind of posthumously did a police sketch of, sort of, and then turned it into an illustration, which anyone who goes to the article, The Beast of Brassknocker Hill, can see. It's a brief article, as it should be, because the flap itself was brief, but it's the kind of stuff I love. I love drawing monsters, so it's a weird case like this that allows me to sort of put on a creative hat and try to reimagine what this anonymous eyewitness saw.
Let's move on to the next one. Let's go back to 1961. summertime. A lady, a mother of 2 daughters, they're hanging out. What happened with the dark baby?
This is a weird case. This is a scary thing because it's about the kinds of things that you can wake up to see. It's, and the last thing you want to see when you wake up. But basically, this story comes to us from really noted American ufologist, scientist, and investigator Leonard Stringfield, who just did tons of important research for ICAP and other organizations in the 60s and until he passed away, basically. But this is one of the many cases that he had reported to him and that he put down. And when I came across it in a list of his case files, I was fascinated. And there's not a lot of information on it. And the eyewitnesses are impossible to track down, unfortunately. But this is basically what happened, and it's incredible. It began at about 1:30 a.m. in August of 1961. A woman who was identified only as Mrs. Quinn abruptly awoke to find what she described as a terrible-looking creature hovering beside her bed. She described it as a big blob with a small round head and no neck, looking like a roly-poly. And that, for your audience members who might not know, is one of those old sort of like inflatable punching things that kind of always rights itself. So it's sort of like a distended bowling pin, I guess, for lack of a better term. It had big eyes that had wrinkles around them, and the eyes were actually glowing. So it's weird. Some descriptions say it actually had a mouth full of teeth. Others don't mention that. I included it in my illustration simply because it only enhanced the terrifying aspect of it. So this woman wakes up from a dead sleep to see this dark, floating, vaguely bowling pin-shaped thing with glowing, wrinkly eyes, wrinkles around the eyes, hovering next to her bed, possibly with a toothy grin. So she was staring at it, and she watched as it drifted across her bedroom toward a bed where her daughters were sleeping. Her 14-year-old daughter, the older daughter, Judy, awoke, and she saw this bizarre black specter just sort of hanging above her head. So now we have 2 eyewitnesses, not just one person that may have been dreaming, but 2 people. She decided that she said it looked like and this is a reference to the old Disney cartoon and not politically correct, but a huge tar baby with enormous eyes. So again, it's black with these big bulging eyes. Here's the thing. She felt that the thing was talking to her psychically. And this is what she said, and this is a direct quote. "I knew it wanted me to go somewhere. I found myself slipping off the bed. Suddenly the thing released its strange force and it was gone." So now we're in a whole other territory here. Bad enough you have something that can apparently defy the laws of gravity, that can float without the help of wings or any appendages, that looks this terrifying, but now it can kind of command you with its thoughts. This is just completely bizarre. As soon as she felt its force kind of snap from her, this thing just vanished, just disappeared. Other reports say it went into a wall, and then the wall sort of evaporated around it, but most of the accounts I've come across say that it just simply vanished. If that's the case, then obviously this is not a typical animal. This is something that is much more bizarre and infinitely more terrifying than most things we're going to find on Earth.
That almost sounds alien, or some sort of spiritual, demonic entity.
That would be my first inclination, too. I mean, it seems it's not an animal. There's just no way around that. This description by the mother and the daughter, and mercifully the younger daughter never woke up, and I'm sure that's something she would be grateful to this day, because who wants a memory of that? I don't know how you sleep again after that. If I ever woke up and saw anything half as terrifying as that hovering above me, much less trying to give me telepathic commands, I doubt I would feel comfortable blinking for the next few years. So I feel horrible for this woman. But yeah, I mean, it definitely seems to have a lot in common with a lot of extraterrestrial reports, especially the telepathic commands, the ability to vanish instantaneously, the ability to defy gravity without any apparent means of support. and also spectral, a lot of ghost-like visitations. Perhaps this is some weird thing. Also, interdimensional needs to be included. I mean, there are perhaps creatures, perhaps even all around us at all times that we might not be privy to, that occasionally can, for whatever confluence of events, appear as corporeal in our world, where we can actually see them with our eyes and, unfortunately, probably touch them and experience them with our senses. And who knows? Who knows what? I mean, they say we're surrounded by infinite dimensions at all times, and they have, you've probably, I'm sure you've read up, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have too, about things like the shadow biosphere, which are just, there's paranormal elements to that and very scientific elements to that, but creatures that could be constantly surrounding us that just we simply wouldn't recognize because of our inability to recognize them. So that to me is the most terrifying implication. I mean, if it's demonic, that's terrible. If it's an alien, it's frightening and unknowable. But if it's something that's always here that we just don't know about, that to me somehow gets under my skin even more.
And it only happened once.
Only once. Nothing like this has ever been described again. This is another one where I did a sort of forensic back illustration. Unfortunately, this one I could not confirm with any eyewitnesses. Try though I might, because I really would love to have this described to me by one of the eyewitnesses in complete detail. But there's been nothing like this else in the record. Elements of it, like say the large eyes, are often seen on aliens. The teeth have been seen on many different things. But a bulbous black roly-poly, as Mrs. Quinn put it, no. There is nothing like this in the record that I've ever seen before. And if your listeners have ever heard of anything similar to it, I would invite them and would love to hear from them at Cryptopia. You can send us Cryptopia.us. You can send us, an email or whatever. Find us on our Facebook page, which is also Cryptopia on Facebook, and send us a message, because I would love to create a pattern for these things. This is one of those things that fascinates me because it's so unique, but I also love it when new cases come about where you can start building, because you can't really, it's sort of like what an investigator would do, I guess, trying to solve a crime. Until you can build a pattern, it's very difficult to kind of ascertain what's going on. But as it stands now, this is a standalone, absolutely unique, and in my opinion, utterly terrifying event.
Well, we got time for one more creature. We got about 10 minutes left with you here, my friend. And we're going to go back to the Triangle, of course, Ohio. And Old Orange Eyes back in 1959.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is something that was said to, it's like another kind of dingy, ape-like creature. Needless to say, some people said it had glowing orange eyes. Other people said that when their flashlights hit it, or headlights when they drove by, that it reflected orange, which would make sense. I mean, animal eyes tend to reflect, bright green or orange. But this legend started in, I believe, March 28th of 1959, when 3 teenagers encountered a large bipedal. In this case, this first case, and this is interesting, it was hairless, what they described, which is even weirder. Because most of the reports of orange eyes basically say it's this kind of a orange-eyed Bigfoot type creature, probably very much in line with the Murfreesboro mud monster, but not white, that was living in a kind of a sewer entrance beneath a cemetery near Cleveland, which also makes it one of the ones closer to an urban area than most. But this first description said they didn't have it. Now, what's interesting about the first description is that it happened on Ruggles Road near the Charles Mill Lake Reservoir in Mansfield, Ohio. Now, here's the weird thing. You might remember, and some of your listeners might remember, when we talked about the Mill Lake monster some episodes ago. Now, I'll give your audience a quick description of this. This is another creature that's about 7 feet tall, had reflective green eyes, no arms, no hair, and huge flippers. And it came out of the water of the reservoir and terrified some eyewitnesses. So this creature, what I'm thinking is that some of the reports are perhaps of this creature, but it got associated with the Orange Eyes mythology because that's what the eyewitnesses were familiar with. And some of them, I think, are a separate hairy creature, much like the Murfreesboro mud monster that we already talked about, that just happened to be living, near a body of water, again, in the traveling sewers near the cemetery. But it's an interesting confluence of two very strange and seemingly separate entities coexisting in a geographical location that is basically on top of each other. And they're both very odd, and you have to, and it's no wonder actually that the legends actually become so convoluted and confused, because when you're dealing with two really unique legends and creatures, basically, that people are reporting from the same basic area, and you want to try to kind of blend them, but I'm thinking we're dealing with two unique phenomena that just happen to be coexisting, which makes it, again, Ohio, it's like the king of weird when it comes to the United States in terms of unique legends.
I just find it intriguing that the orange eyes, like I've heard of Bigfoot having the reddish type eyes, but to go like almost a luminescent orange, that's just very, very different.
Oh, it is, and that's the thing, too. I mean, if it's reflecting, if it's orange eyes reflecting, we've all driven past raccoons or other animals and seen that kind of metallic colored glint on their corneas. That's one thing. But if it's self-illuminated, that becomes a whole other thing. And when, there's a lot of anonymous reports of kids would dare each other to kind of crawl beneath this, tunnel, by the cemetery and look in, and then they would claim to see bright orange eyes in the distance. But if it is something that can create its own light, then that's not typical. That's not what bioluminescence is. It's just not the way eyes are supposed to work. What's also interesting is that in that same area, and again in 1973, same year as Murfreesboro and a lot of other wonderful paranormal things, there was a flap of UFO sightings, which made some people think that perhaps these creatures are of extraterrestrial origin, and that would explain why they would have glowing eyes, or why the other one, the Mill Lake monster, would be armless and flippered and bizarre in its own right. So that's an interesting twist too, because once you get into extraterrestrial entities, well, then it's carte blanche. I mean, the world's your oyster. We see the biodiversity on Earth between, a crawdaddy and an elephant and a billion other creatures that are so fascinating and diverse and can live in so many different environments on one planet. We can only imagine, in the vastness of the cosmos, what kind of traits evolution could develop, and glowing eyes would make sense, especially if you come from a dark environment. But of course, this is me just speculating wildly and just having a good time with it. There's no way to know for sure.
So how much does this creature differ from what we perceive as Sasquatch?
Not much. With the exception of the glowing eyes, they're actually very similar. Now the Mill Lake monster, and again, we have an article actually under the Charles Mill Lake monster, to be very specific, on Cryptopia, is the one that's associated with it. That's the armless, flippered, glowing, green-eyed, hairless entity. But specifically the orange eye sightings, this thing is hairy, tall, some say up to 11 feet in height, which makes it extraordinary even by Sasquatch standards, because the standard height of a Sasquatch is anywhere between 7 and 9 feet. So 11 feet is tremendous. One eyewitness said it might weigh in excess of 1,000 pounds, which would make sense if you're 11 feet tall and you're a largely built animal, you would. But it's essentially, with the exception of its actually glowing eyes, as some eyewitnesses have claimed, very much like a Bigfoot. But then again, the legends of Bigfoot, I shouldn't say very often, but more frequently than people might expect, tie in with UFO sightings. Now, I'm not speculating that I think Sasquatch is an extraterrestrial entity, but you can't rule out that possibility entirely, especially considering, the rarity of sightings, how difficult it is to track these things, and the fact that there have been people who claim to have actually seen them in direct contact with UFOs, or at least concurrently with a UFO sighting.
Either way, sounds like a creature that I really don't want to be running into, my friend. Another one of them. No. Hey, we have a couple of minutes left with you. I want to sneak in one more here. This comes from Michael in our SOR Space Travelers Club. He's wondering if you've ever heard about the log snakes in the Pacific Northwest.
I have not. But that's the beauty of Google. Let's see if I can dig something out. Log snakes, as in wood?
Yeah.
Huh. No, I love it. This is the kind of stuff I love. I have not, and I'm not even seeing anything come up. I would love... what was his name again?
Michael McNeil.
Michael, I would love it. I'm speaking directly to you now. If you could send me an email at cryptopia.us or on our Facebook page, put a message and let me know about it, because this is something I would love to write about. This is exactly what I love. When I can't find anything about a creature like this and I've never heard of it, then it gets my juices flowing, and now I'm just percolating with curiosity. So please send in any information you have, and I'm sorry I can't help you because this is a new one to me.
Yes. Gotta love the new ones. Gotta love the new ones. That is for sure. That is for sure. When you go out in the field, and I realize evidence is tough at the best of times, have you ever found anything?
Well, yeah. When I was in Louisiana, this would be about 2001 or 2000, I think the summer of 2001. We were down there, one of my other partners that I co-founded American Monsters with, doing a documentary on the Honey Island Swamp Monster, which is, again, kind of like a skunk ape type creature, ape-like, smelly. What made this interesting is that the man who first saw this thing, his name was Holyfield, he took casts of the prints, which we actually got to handle when we interviewed his granddaughter, Dana Holyfield, and these are very much like giant alligator prints. He described it as a combination of a reptile and a mammal. So when we were down there, we got taken pretty deep into the woods, a place where you needed to take a canoe and then take a horse, and I'm not experienced very much in either. I mean, I'm not from the guts of New York. I'm from upstate New York, but I'm not... I've never really ridden a horse before or anything like that. So we got pretty far out there in some pretty desolate territory. And what we found was a bunch of wild boar carcasses that had had their heads ripped off. Like literally torn off with strings of skin by something big. The guy who was our guide got very anxious, and we had to leave the area almost immediately. He had seen actually a creature lift a skinned rabbit off a line that he had hunted with his nephew and had been camping up in that area some months before. So he was terrified, but we got video footage of it. We studied it, and it really blew my mind. It's not to say that there aren't some large predators there, but I don't know of anything that actually rips the heads off of wild boars, and they were not small boars.
My friend, I got to wrap this thing up. Good to have you on, and I look forward to chatting to you on December 21st. We'll have you back.
I am excited. It was great to reconnect with you, Dave, and great to reconnect with your listeners. And again, I'll give a shout-out to your listeners. If you have anything you want to ask, or if you have a sighting you'd love to report, please send it to cryptopia.us and check it out, and we would love to just start a conversation, like the Facebook page. And Dave, thank you so much, man. I needed this. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
All right, have a great rest of the show. Bye-bye, guys.
Is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia US. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Morphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride as we say thank you once again to Rob Morphy for being here for the first 2 hours of the show. We're going to get paranormal here momentarily. But before we do, I do want to remind you that if you're listening in on the United Public Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans, we appreciate you having us along for your nightly ride, and thank you for allowing us into your household, into your cars, wherever you may be listening. If you're on Revolution Radio, remember it is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight, and it is a toughie. Hesperornithes. Hesperornithes is the password. I don't know what it means, but he comes up with it every single time, and I really don't know what translates from that, but hey, he sets the password. I got no say in this, and that's what we do. Remember, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I could be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. You can also tune us in on TuneIn. You can also download this show and others on iTunes. So if you have an iTunes account, we're pretty easy to find. Just type in Spaced Out Radio Show and you are good to go. While on our website, you can sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. You can also read up on our latest blogs, read up on the SOR Space Wire, and we got a bunch of other cool features on there. If you like our music, hey, give Bumblefoot a hello on social media. He's definitely someone who will say hello to you, and thank you for that. We really appreciate that. So, tonight in the final hour, we got Eric Markham from the SOR Space Wire, and we have a newbie in the field. A newbie. Jim Kolesnik, or is it... What's the Ukrainian pronunciation of that, Jim? Kolesnik?
Kolesnik.
You're not even a Kolesnik? You're not even going hard on the Y?
No.
Oh, I see.
Kolesnik.
See, us Ukrainians, we got to stick together. It's all part of the tradition here. Absolutely. Now, Jim is with Vancouver Supernatural. It's a brand new group out of the lower mainland of British Columbia. He's been investigating the paranormal for a long time, and there's a reason why we have Jim on here. And Eric, I say welcome to you as well.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So we got to take it easy on Jim tonight because this is his first time on the radio. So we're all excited for you, Jim. And you know, when you're not ghost hunting, you're a pig farmer by trade. How do you go from pig farmer to ghost hunter?
Well, I do concrete work as well. I raise pigs for myself and just healthy eating, really. So it's I have my own way of feeding them. I don't like to try to get close to organic. But yeah, it's just fun for me, really, and it's a cheap way to feed my family.
Well, exactly, and if you ever are in this neck of the woods, old Davy here has a real fascination with bacon. I will say that. What Canadian doesn't? Yeah. What Canadian doesn't? Yeah. So this weekend, you and I are actually going to meet, because we are going to put on a paranormal event at the local museum here, way out in the sticks where I live, where you used to live. And it's called the 108 Mile Heritage Site, which is very, very haunted. Why don't you tell us a little bit, Jim, about the Heritage Site?
Well, it's a very positive energy type of place. There's the spirits that we've caught there, either on camera or EVP. They're all good, and we never got any real negative energy out of it. It's there's an old man in the barn that really likes his picture taken. I got one of a full body apparition of him, so that was pretty cool. That was about 3 years ago. And along the way, I met a guy. I met a good friend, Ken, and he runs the place. He was pretty good to us. He really enjoyed the paranormal. He loved coming on the hunts with us too. So I got to know him pretty well, and to hear he passed was pretty sad.
Absolutely.
So we thought we'd.
Absolutely. And what we did and what we set up was a charity paranormal hunt for the spirits on the site, because Ken Long, who ran the museum for so many years, he was just a legend in this area, and he loved the place. He's a former veteran. He was born and raised in South Africa, and just a couple of months ago, Ken actually passed away from pneumonia. And we got together, and Jim and I said, you know what, let's do something here. Let's try and raise some money to help get his ashes back home to his family in South Africa, because here in Canada, Ken had no family. And, you know, it's important to try and give back, isn't it? Because Ken was the type of guy, Jim, who really loved the paranormal aspect of the museum site, but he never really crossed the line with the spirits, did he? I've filmed him overnight as he slept several times. I know that he's woken up to bruises on his hands and wrists. There is a little girl that was in that room. We've witnessed her on several occasions. The place is pretty active, and it's like I said, it's all positive, and they took care of him, I think. So. And he enjoyed them being around too. He knew they were there, and I think that once we go back this weekend, he'll definitely be there. So it'll be very exciting. I'm curious. You honestly think Ken's spirit will be there? That we may be actually able to connect with him from the other side?
Over the years, I've kind of studied I try to anyways, on the amount of energy a new spirit has. And I think the beginning, they don't have a whole lot. It takes them a little while to figure it out, how to get energy, how to take it from here, use it there. And I think Ken, since he already knew so much about the paranormal, he's going to figure it out. He's going to figure out where to get that energy from. I think he's going to make himself known on that night.
Absolutely. And listening in, Eric, I know you're probably chomping at the bit thinking, man, North Carolina is quite the drive from British Columbia, but you got to work, so we're just going to rub it in a little bit to you, buddy.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel the burn. Yeah, I know they need to come up with Star Trek-like transporters so distances like that don't mean anything. I would be there with bells on, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It'll be a lot of fun.
So, for people who will be going to this event, Jim, what can they experience?
Well, from what I understand, you have your friends going in, and they look to me to be really experienced as well. So I'm thinking that if somebody wants to learn how to do it and have fun, and at the same time, I think that would be a perfect opportunity for you, and it'll be a lot of fun. Bring your cameras, and with a low, try and put something over your flash so it doesn't flash so bright. The spirits in the barn, they don't like a whole lot of flash. So just for that reason, and then everybody can take pictures. So I think that more energy get blown through them the less you see them. We've studied that barn pretty well. It's a very fun place, and I hope they open it up to people. I hope
we're opening up the barn. We're opening up the barn. I got a little pull there.
Open up the barn. That guy's a great guy. He loves to have his picture taken.
Well, I have to tell you this, because when I went there for the first time with Chronicles of the Unknown, I literally, or Ken literally, opened up the barn for us. And the barn, just to describe to our people here as we paint a picture of what it is the barn is on, I believe, the original site of, there's a lake right there called the 108 Mile Ranch Lake. The barn is an old Clydesdale barn. And they used to use the Clydesdales, I believe, to help move logs around and do some farming, because this community in this area is very large into the logging industry. So they don't hold any more animals in there. But the problem is, it's full of spirits. There are spirits walking around on the upper level. And when we were there with Chronicles of the Unknown about a year ago, just over a year ago, there were 6 of us. There was the 4 members of Chronicles. There was myself, as I was kind of watching in the background because I'd never been on a paranormal investigation. And there was the caretaker, Ken Long. Now, we're about 2/3 of the way down this barn. And this barn is literally, I'm going to say, 50, 60 yards long. It's a big barn. And something told me to look towards the direction that we were coming from. I just, when you get that feeling that you're being watched or that you just need to turn and look, well, I did. And this barn is pitch black. There's no lights on for the investigation because the Chronicles crew was using their night vision, so we had no lights on in the building. And I turned and looked to the doorway where we came in, and there was a man standing there, kind of crouching and leaning over, looking down at us. And it was like he saw that I was looking back at the barn. And he just stood up straight, and he was gone. So after they stopped filming, I said to the Chronicles gentleman, I said, there was a guy just at the end of the barn. I'm wondering if he was going to try and close the door on us to see if there was anybody here. So we walked back down there, and the first door that you get to is this storage shed inside the barn. And the light was on. So we all asked, how did the light get on? And Ken literally reaches for his keys to unlock the padlock. He unlocks the padlock to the door, walks inside, turns the light off. And so all of a sudden the next question is, Ken, who else has keys? He's like, I'm the only one with keys here. And that light was not on. That spirit in the barn turned the light on, and that just tripped me out, Jim. I can honestly say that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he's got a lot of energy, and he knows how to use it. That's for sure. That's for sure.
What's the strangest thing you've, besides the gentleman in the barn, that you have dealt with at the 108 Mile Museum?
Oh, lots of really good EVPs. We've tried and we've tried and we've tried, and we can't bring up the people in the history of the 108. We've gotten some names like Jim, but that's my name as well, so it could have been something. We've got about 11 spirits in the house, just with different EVPs. You can actually tell just by the sounds of their voice. Yeah, the place is really very positive. So it's a fun place to investigate. I'm glad that they're opening it up.
Oh,
I hope you're taking care of it. You're taking care of it, right?
Well,
yeah.
I'm not taking care of the site, but they've asked me to help with the paranormal side here, because the one thing about this area, and Eric, maybe it's like that in North Carolina too. You have a very old area there as well. But up here, especially in Canada, the paranormal is still such a very taboo subject when it comes to absolutely everything that goes on. Yes, this area has a ton of experiences, from ET abduction to Sasquatch sightings to ghosts absolutely everywhere along the Gold Rush Trail. that people believe it's there, but it's still very hush-hush. We just don't talk about that kind of stuff. But when it comes to this, there's no better way to introduce people than through the museum. So the museum crowd, the people who run the museum, and it's all volunteer, they came to me and they said, we need a paranormal specialist because we have groups all the time who want to come on in and investigate and check out this area, and really we don't know what the hell that we're doing. So basically, Jim, I got told that I'm the new guy and that's just the way it's going to be.
Well, that's a good idea because a lot of the people that are in the heritage thing, they're like, they're all good people, and they have their own businesses. They don't have time to deal with that kind of stuff. So it's a great idea. I'm glad that they're doing it. And then there's a lot of places down in the States. You see where museums have turned into just basically ghost hunting sites almost, and I'm sure it helps. I'm sure it helps out along the way for them.
Eric, do you notice a lot of that down in North Carolina? Because it is such an old state in the Union that there's probably a plethora of areas that just have not been investigated or even studied yet.
Yeah, we're also in the what you call the buckle of the Bible Belt here, and that kind of stuff is looked on as taboo. It's getting a little better now. Toward the coast, like in New Bern, they're more open about the hauntings. Of course, a lot of them are businesses that want you to come there because it's haunted. But in the area I'm in right now, in the Piedmont, very settled by a very churchy kind of, God, I'm trying to think of a non-derogatory term. They're stuffy. There's a lot of Southern Baptists and a lot of Waldensians and Moravians, and they just don't approve of things like tattoo parlors, or they're puritanical. That's what I'm looking for. They're kind of puritanical around here, and you just don't get a lot of coverage for the paranormal. But there are groups, and there's a few sites that have gotten some coverage, like Kerner's Folly and Kernersville. It's lightening up a little bit, but not too much. We do get like Bigfoot sightings out by Hanging Rock State Park and Pilot Mountain, things like that, and they make it to the news, but it's always sort of a ha-ha, Joe Plumber's crack saw Bigfoot and ran him off his porch type of thing. So I think on one hand they'd like to embrace it for the tourism that it would bring, but on the other hand they're just too puritanical to let go and enjoy the experience.
It's almost the same verbatim up here, isn't it, Jim?
It is, but when you have, I've dealt with Baptist people, and they're very pure. And there's a lot of Jehovah's up there that are severe. But I mean, it's like anything. Everybody has their own belief. You have to respect it. So if they don't want it around, they don't have to have it around. And I like the fact that what you got going on there in the 108 and the heritage sites of BC are starting to go, hey, let's try and make some money with these groups. And you can, like, even if they have it for a party, like have like what we're doing, have one or two every year, just for fun, or have people come by all the time. It's up to you. But either way, I think somebody's going to have no problem with giving you $5 to walk up and down that hallway in the barn. Like I would, if I knew what was there, absolutely. Everybody loves taking a ghost picture.
I fully agree with you on that. And you know what? It is funky. And we're going to be going through 4 different buildings that night. We have the barn, we have the house, we have the old post office, which There's a couple bedrooms upstairs, and it gets freaky. There's always people. If you're standing up in the top rooms, you all of a sudden hear people walking up the stairs, and there's shadows everywhere. It really is a phenomenal place, with every building having some sort of action. And I know other teams who have gone in there, Jim, and maybe you can concur with this, that they honestly believe the 108 Museum is one of the most haunted places in British Columbia. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I would say, I would say be more than that. I think you would probably almost put that one on the map of Canada. I've done a lot of investigations. I haven't gone too far back east, but, I follow a lot of people. And the 108 Heritage Site is pretty crazy.
What makes
I think it's right up there.
Jim, what makes this area so haunted?
It's the Gold Rush Trail. A lot of people died on that trail. A lot of people died. And the energy that I believe that the river, the Fraser River that flows basically all the way up the whole trail, I think spirits can take energy or flow with the energy of a river. I'm not quite sure, right? Nobody really knows. But I think that they get attracted to that type of energy. And all the way up is just pure energy. You can go down to the, just before Clinton and all those ranches in behind there. Crap, each one of those is just crazy.
Now, for our listeners who have never been to British Columbia, or for some of you who don't even know where it is, we're talking about literally the central part of Canada's most western province. And if you drew a line straight up from California through Nevada, that's all called the Gold Rush Trail. It comes right through Oregon, Washington State, straight through British Columbia into the Yukon, or what you may know as the Klondike, and then over to Alaska. So literally thousands of people died here. It was a violent trail. There was gold robberies, there was prostitution, there was alcoholism, anything to try and get someone's claim or to steal their gold. It was a violent time about 150 years ago in this area, wasn't it, Jim?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you do. The 108 has the story of Agnes McVeeb, but I can't do a lot of in-depth study on her because there's just no records. I think a fire in New West supposedly burned them all. But I like hearing other people's opinions of the 108 and whether Agnes had anything to do with it or not. So we haven't found any really negative energy from the place. So something tells me if she was there and did all those bad things, she would probably be present. But she didn't apparently die there. So I'm thinking maybe that they don't have the ability to go back. It asks a whole bunch of questions.
Now, Eric, when you hear something along this lines, when you hear that, all these hauntings are going on, and much like you said in North Carolina where you are, there seems to be a lot of areas that are still puritanical, as you call them, because, ghost hunting is still kind of taboo. What do you think has to be done to open up this portion of history? Because one of the things Chronicles of the Unknown does, and Jim here does, is they try and tell a story through the ghost hunt. Do you think that's a proper way to do it?
Yes. Oh, yes. I think that's the best approach, is trying to unload, let's take the history out of the box and use this investigation as a way to do so. There was a very nasty, a man killed his family on Christmas Eve nearby here. And supposedly if anybody sweeps the leaves off his grave, something, puts the trash and the litter back on his grave. John Lawson was his name. And if you try to investigate, you're liable to get shot. If you don't belong in that little neighborhood or that community, you better not be out there. because they have actually circled the wagons around this event, and it's very, they take the road signs down, and trying to convince these people to get a story out there, the history, and to investigate. It ain't going to happen probably in my lifetime, not in this generation. They've really got it locked up down there. But there's other places where if you were to go, well, like Kerner's Folly, a supposedly haunted site, a guy built this really weird house. I haven't been there yet, but supposedly it's quite active. And one of the most famous sites around here is on the Battleship North Carolina. They get that's one of the local ghost hunting groups. That's their yearly trip, is they're going to go to the Battleship North Carolina. And if you approach them from the viewpoint of, we wanted to tell the story and divulge some of the history of this ship and some of the people that might still be on it, you're going to have a lot more luck getting on there than if you just say, hey, we want to do a ghost hunting show and run around. If you don't have any respect for it, you're not going to get on board to do it. And I think that's the major thing. As long as you're respectful about what you're trying to do, it goes a long way with these people. It's probably the same as anywhere, except where they're just doing the ghost hunting tours to make money. Thinking some of the mental hospitals and stuff that have been bought up by private owners, and it's more of a Disney World for ghosts type of thing. That I don't agree with.
Jim, what's your thoughts on paranormal tourism? Good thing, bad thing?
Well, I think it's good if it's controlled really well. Like if you on investigations that I've done in the past, if you overpopulate an area with investigations, the spirits just don't start. I mean, who knows? They just. I think the more people go into an area, the less chance you're going to see something or get something. So you have to control it, totally control it. Like I don't know, just limit the people that go in. It'd be a full-time job. So I mean, you got to do it. You got to do it and get paid doing it.
But do you think it's a good thing? Because a lot of people tend to think that ghosts are ghosts, and they don't tend to think of them as one time a person that walked on this planet as a human. Do you think that message is lost with a lot of groups?
Well, nobody. That's probably one of the questions that we ask. Nobody really knows. We try and find things out like that, and that's the fun of doing it. That's why we all do it. Is just out of fun and study. I do lots of research, trying to figure it out, and to me that's fun. Some people they just. I don't know. I think it's a good thing, the tourism, but it has to be seriously controlled, because over investigated areas, I think, would decrease after a while, and it'll just be like a gong show. Nobody would, I think. I don't know. Who knows? It would be a study for sure. I would love to keep going there and just finding out the reactions of what the after effects of what it would be if you have people keep going in there, and study it. That would be fun. Or your friends there with the Chronicles. It would be a good study to have.
I fully agree with that, and I think paranormal tourism it's a real hyped up thing these days. I think it's a good thing, but it has to be controlled. And a lot of these teams that go in there, and I'm not just saying at the museum, but who go into these sites, they don't show a lot of respect. They don't show a lot of I don't want to use the word remorse, but they don't show a lot of respect. We'll just keep it at that word for what they are dealing with, whether it's people who walked on this planet, whether it's just residual energy or whatever it may be. And I think that's one of the lost arts of the paranormal at that point. Eric, I bring you into this conversation now. Do you think that there's enough people out there who actually take the time to say, hey, please, thank you, could we please get this information from you?
No. I don't. What I'm finding with this, I tried to get a group started here, and all the information is kept hush-hush. There's just not, I don't know, there's no spirit of cooperation. It's almost like competing teams. I find that the information is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of objectified, and it's made into a, trying to think of a proper rated PG term for. But no, my experience has not been that there are people that are in this area like that. I just think they need to loosen up a little bit. I might not have heard the question right. I'm at work and I was multitasking. I hope if I didn't answer it, ask again and I'll try it.
Well, I think you did just fine. Let's bring Jim back in here for a moment. Jim, we're hoping to get 50, 60 people out to this event in order to try and raise money. You know, do you think the public will actually get some sort of experience? Because in the end, I think a lot of people who've never been on a ghost hunt, they come on into these areas and they think, well, you know, this is probably frequent, and then they end up getting bored.
No, I think that the people that are going to come, like if you go, say, if you take a drive up the trail and you stop at all these little towns, there's really, sometimes during the summer, you have to actually wait to get a chance to go in and do like an old cemetery beside the road. There's a lot of people that have, and you know, they're set up with those little cases that they have, you know, with a K2 and a recorder. So a lot of people here I've been noticing over the years, they're more and more like that. Like, it's getting busier and busier. And people are enjoying it more. I mean, it's great that all these shows on TV and stuff, it's kind of like, they've given the boost to the whole area. 'Cause people, I want to be a ghost hunter or something. You know, like it's just people are enjoying it, and it's actually a lot of fun. You know, as long as you respect where you go, that's the biggest thing. Like if you start moving things and going into graves and, you know, and moving things around, well, that's disrespectful. You should, if you're going to do it, pay some respect.
Are you afraid that if they open this site up, okay, this historic site where you guys are going to do this, are you afraid that they might over-commercialize it or try and turn a buck off of it and kind of ruin it?
I don't think they would. If there's a lot of, I think if Dave's handling it, I'm sure he'll take care of it.
Well, yeah, if Dave has anything to do with that, I know it'll be kept respectful.
Little do many of the paranormal teams know that there will be a fee coming up. That'll scare away the bad ones.
Yeah, that should.
Well, it's not about scaring away the bad ones. Even if you look at it like, okay, say whatever the fee may be, it's something that people like to do. It's a hobby. It's, you know, it's probably going to be cheaper than going to a movie and paying for your popcorn and paying for your wife's popcorn and her ticket too. So, or your family. It's just a fun thing to do. And more people are doing it just out of a fun little hobby. And who doesn't? And to get a fee, I mean, look, you have to go, you have to walk them around. You know, it's not free. So to make money, well, you have to pay for lighting. You have to do all this stuff. There's fees involved in letting people come and do their little thing there. So you can't expect it to be free.
Very understandable. And I'm just going to calm a situation down in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. People, knock it off. Everyone's allowed an opinion. Everyone's allowed to be different. Nobody has to leave. Let's just bring it down a little bit. Let's all take a Valium, maybe 2, smoke a joint, do something in there, because we're getting a little bit overwhelmed. So just...
Am I getting roasted on that thing?
No, it's not you.
As long as I'm not...
It's not you. You know. So let's just bring it down. Bring it down. Hey, we have a question here from Joyce, and I'll hit you up first, Jim, on this one because you're the newbie. Do you think spirits are aware of an investigator's intention?
It depends on what their intentions are. If you go and provoke, then you're going to get a... You know, you have to do... You can't just go in one thing all the time, all the same thing, or you're only going to get a certain study. If you go in and try and react to a spirit... but I think in the end, sure they do. Who knows? Maybe they're just standing there, just watching you ask these silly questions. Who knows?
Eric, what is your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I got distracted because I was working on something. What was the question?
Do you think spirits are aware of an investigator's intention?
I would think so. I think we don't have any kind of... we don't have like a textbook of what spirits are like, but I think if you go into a place with the wrong energy, you're probably going to have an effect on... I think the observer does have an effect on what they're observing. And I think if you go in there like a bunch of buffoons, you're probably not going to get much activity. I mean, these are people. I mean, they are people. They're on a different vibratory level or a different plane of existence. But if they didn't tolerate fools willingly when they were alive, they're probably not all puppies and kittens and warmth about tolerating fools now that they're dead. Probably less so.
Well, it all goes back to what their heritage is, too, right? Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, it could. Like, I just think sometimes when you're investigating, you should. It helps to know the history so that you have nerves to touch. If you touch a nerve, like say maybe the person had a dog or maybe a cat, or if you touch a nerve by looking at as much history as you can, I think you might get more of a reaction. Like, but if you intimidate and just do stupid things, I think they just stand there and look at you.
The provoking. I've got sort of a hot button, I'm sort of a hot-tempered person anyway, and I think if I had poltergeist powers or whatever as a haunting, somebody provoked me, I'd throw a chair at them. Say, there, how's that for a response?
Yeah, but sometimes provoking, sometimes provoking is, but you still have to have respect.
True enough. I would be the guy who ties someone's shoelaces together. That's what I would do.
Yes.
You want to be a jerk to me? Here, trip.
That would be cool.
Mm-hmm. So, Jim, when you look at
materialize in front of them looking like, gore on toast, just so you can spook them into running and their shoelaces are tied.
Jim, when you look at this museum, you also mentioned there is a young girl or two in the main house on the museum. I've had a conversation with her through a K2 meter. How active is she?
Oh, she's awesome. She'll come in, we've had meters set up all over the room. She'll go and run around them and touch each one so that they kind of go off, and you can almost visualize her running around. She's done some amazing things.
Could you tell us a little bit about her or what you've learned?
I caught a vision of her just, and it was, I got blonde hair. I got probably about 4 foot tall, and I got one of, it just the feeling I got from her and the EVPs we got from her. Like she loved Ken. We got Ken's voice by her several times. and she's very active. Like the spirits there have a lot of activity, and I think it's from the years and years and years and years of just not having any paranormal researchers going through there, and maybe, right? So I'm liking it. It was a lot of fun being pretty much the first person in there. I don't know if I was the first person, but the first person to go through all the house and everything with Ken was exciting. And I know that I did a lot of work. Like I did a lot of work with the heritage site, and the heritage people are great. It took a lot of convincing to everybody in their committee, but they all pulled together and let us in there. And for that, I gotta take my hat off to them.
And there's a little bit of everything around that household. Right in the middle of the museum, there's this big red house. Yeah. The walls are paper thin. You can hear the wind through them, even though the outside at points is brick. But the walls, it's cold, it feels damp, even though it isn't. There's relics of guns and everything that's been found in the area over the last 150 years. And there's a little bit of everybody in this house. We have the children, we have women, we have men, we have spirits walking along the property. It really is a place where you really don't know what you're going to get, is it, Jim? No, it's exciting. It's always exciting to investigate the 108. And tomorrow and this weekend is going to be a pure pleasure. Once again, Eric is jealous.
Yeah, I know. Well, I haven't even got my passport. I've filed my paperwork, but I haven't got my passport back yet. So as soon as that thing gets here, I'll surprise you all by showing up there.
Well, hurry up before the snow melts, because I want to throw a snowball at you, my friend.
I'll just have my beard swallow it up.
Jim, in British Columbia in general, do you think that the higher and more north you go, let's say from British Columbia straight across the prairie provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, that the more people in the area know it's haunted, but it's kind of like this hidden gem secret to the paranormal world that they just haven't gone out to find yet?
Give it time. I think that if you follow me on my page, I will. I'm going to list all the places that I've investigated along the Gold Rush Trail. I've investigated a lot of places along the Fraser River, so I'll be giving a little write-up on each one. What to bring, what to do, what time to go. So just on things that I know, maybe make it funner for people. Making awareness of the places along the Gold Rush Trail they're crazy. There's a lot of ranches down below. Oh.
No, go ahead. I meant to type that out. I'm sorry.
That's okay. What was your question?
No, I was looking at the fact that that area was only really settled by Europeans, like maybe a little over 100 years ago. And to have all that, usually we think of, okay, England has had people in it, basically for thousands of years. But Vancouver, that area was mostly indigenous or First Nations people. But it seems like all the hauntings are European. To have built up that much psychic energy, I guess, in that little over a century. What is it about that area? That makes these spirits cling and stay?
Well, that's why I think that it has a lot to do with that the Fraser River and the energy around it. I've done Hell's Gate. I've done the tunnel, the old Hell's Gate tunnel. I mean, we got an EVP from a Chinese person. So I think that a lot of the road, the highway, was built by Chinese immigrants. And even in Barkerville, there's a Chinese sector, and and that was the only place that we actually got any activity. But there's a lot of Chinese, there's a lot of East Indian. You go, halfway up the valley there, up the river, and like Boston Bar, that's heavily East Indian area. They were a lot of loggers. So a lot of immigrants. They were Ukrainian, Italian, Chinese, East Indian. There was a lot of them.
And you can't forget, if you go north, there was actually camels that were brought in from the Middle East to help miners and loggers throughout their work. So there used to be a giant camel population and people taking camels in northern British Columbia. I only learned that maybe 6-7 months ago.
Cool.
Never thought I would see camels around here. But
do they actually still have some there? Or, I mean,
no.
Have they died off? Or
they've all either died off or been taken back to, I don't know, maybe zoos or something along those lines, or rescue farms or something. But, I mean, literally, we're going back 100-plus years when the camels were here.
Wow. Now, that would be interesting to see a camel in Canada. You can't think of much further from where they started. I think they're supposed to have some down in Arizona or New Mexico in the deserts that are a remnant population that were brought over in the late or early 1800s.
Gentlemen, we're down to 10 minutes, if that.
Wow.
That was fast. That was very, very fast.
A lot of fun.
I told you, man. This is what we do on a nightly basis. You just started listening to us, too, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So
I hope I'm not getting killed on your page, though.
Oh, no.
You're not.
No.
No.
Oh, that Jim guy, get him off.
Who's that Jim guy not bringing bacon to the party? That's what
they're giving this time because it's his first time, but you have to bring bacon next time.
Absolutely.
I'll bring some bacon. Yeah.
Yeah, you never go wrong with that. Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about your new group, Vancouver Supernatural?
Very excited about it. We're getting a lot of nice gigs, and I think that it's more about the group of people that you're with. I enjoy the group that I'm with, and I think we're going to do fun things. It's and you just have to respect the places that you go, and you'll do just fine.
How many on your team right now, and you want to give them a shout out?
Yeah, I got Janine McCosh. You probably know her, and Paul, her wife, her husband, and is Jude Merloff. She's and I've investigated with her in the last group I was with, and she's very sensitive. She's great to be with.
And you guys investigate absolutely everything from buildings and movie studios that are haunted to residentials as well, right?
Yeah, well, we're just getting the ball rolling, and we like to help people out whenever we can, and we don't charge anything, so it's kind of nice to also do research while we're helping.
And that is the key, is to try and use the word help. So many paranormal teams out there don't use that word. They're there for their own benefit, their own energy, their own investigation, their own evidence, and they don't care to help. But we see that a lot in the United States, especially because, I mean, let's face it, paranormal teams, I mean, if all you got to do is go on social media to see how the paradrama is going on a daily basis. It's nuts down there. Nuts! But on the flip side, we really have to remember the word help, don't we, Jim?
You do, and help and respect for these people. I've lived in a haunted house. I know what it's like. So, and when a little kid is getting, somehow touched by a spirit, you have to, you got to find out what that spirit is, and see what, and just and help them understand it. Really, people say they can remove them. People say they can do this and that. Well, whatever. It's if that's what you can do, that's what you can do. But I don't think that you really have much to do with removing spirits from places. But if you just let people know what they have, is usually all the comfort they need.
And, of course, Eric, getting back to that word help, that really seems to be a lost focus on the lower part of North America when it comes to ghost hunting, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like Eric Cooper says, people get in there, stir crap up, and then say, yeah, it's haunted. See you later. They don't do anything about... It just doesn't seem like there's a consensus view, or it hasn't even occurred to most of these groups that maybe you don't want to have a haunting in your home, and then going in there and pissing it off and then leaving is a bad thing. I'm kind of with Cooper on that. It upsets me that a lot of that kind of stuff happens. I think it needs to be more of if you're going to go into somebody's home, you be respectful about it. You listen to what they have to say. You try and find the evidence, and don't make a bad situation worse. And I don't think that mindset is really, like you said, most of the phrase you've coined, they're playing Pokemon Ghost and not really concerned with the people they're leaving behind in the site once they've got their evidence and their little Ghostbuster glands have been all filled up. They're not thinking past that. They're very selfish.
And in reality, we should all be working together. As Jim said earlier, there's questions that need to be answered in the paranormal field. What are these hauntings? What are these spirits? Are they ghosts and spirits of other people, or are they just residual energy? Is there life after death? And Jim, I'm curious to get your opinion on this, because this is mine. Should we not be able to put these brilliant minds together of the people who are doing this and doing this type of research to finally answer some of these age-old questions? Because it would solve maybe a lot of problems for a lot of people.
Well, it's still in the infant parts of, we're just starting to get into this as a group, but I think that if everybody was open and about evidence and work together with ideas, and of course, I mean, the world police system, if it wasn't connected somehow, nobody would ever get caught.
Jimmy, how do people find out more about Vancouver Supernatural if they're listening in British Columbia?
I'm working on the webpage, vancouversupernatural.ca, and I'm on Facebook, Vancouver Supernatural. Over the next little while, I'll be doing a lot of areas, giving little write-ups of places that I've been, and it'd be a lot of fun. And come join us. And at the 108, it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I think so. And the response around here seems to be getting around pretty quick. There is a hockey game that night, and you know how this community is about their hockey team.
Yes.
Yeah, so we got to battle the hockey team, but we'll make it through, because this is Canada after all, and small-town Canada loves their junior hockey. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's a cool little town. 100 Mile House. Yeah.
Absolutely. You don't have hockey down there, Eric. You don't have ice. You don't have ice.
Yeah, but I grew up in Michigan, and we did have hockey. And
Yes.
actually, they had a pretty decent semi-pro team, and I think they were a farm team for somebody, the Nashville Knights in Nashville, Tennessee. I used to get free tickets and go to their games all the time. It was great.
Absolutely.
I miss that a lot.
Yes. I miss the fact that you go to a bar brawl and a hockey game breaks out now. Don't like that anymore. Much preferred it when it was reverse. Gentlemen, you hold on for a minute or two, because I got to wrap this thing up. It's time for Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL. If you are listening in on the Spaced Out Radio side, Bumblefoot is the official music of SOR. Wondering who he is? Yeah, he's the former lead guitarist at Guns N' Roses. He takes us in and brings us out of every Spaced Out Radio episode. Thank you, Mr. B, for your creative genius. Yes, he is our guitar god. Tomorrow night on the show, Director Ruben Langdon will join us. We are going to talk about UFO and ET disclosure. See where we're heading now that Hillary didn't get elected as president and John Podesta won't get his UFO dreams taken care of. Remember, if you want to listen to this show or any other of our archive show, you can go to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can tune us in on TuneIn or download this show and any other show that we have going on iTunes. On social media, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Give our page a like. I want to say thank you to everyone listening in on the United Public Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 160 countries around the world. We are from Canada, the West Coast, Spaced Out Radio, and we do this every single night. Why? Well, maybe we're just a little nuts. Who knows? Thank you as well if you are listening in on Revolution Radio. The Double R Machine's a good place to be. I will talk to all of you in exactly 21 hours from now. Thank you for letting us be a part of your night. And hey, tell a friend. Tell them to come listen. Let's build this thing together. It's all on you. It's all on me. Good night.